The story begun deep within the terrain of Kinui Mountain, where the Toad Ridge can be found, perched high above. There were houses that were almost empty, in this community by the name of Toad Village. A man was narrating to his companion, that when their old leader was around they were so strong that even the local bandits listened to them. But when their leader died the remaining brothers all ditched the new village master, and ran away. And now they are the only ones remaining. The officers will soon arrive and clear out the bandits. They couldn't even defend against them, and they won't survive if they stay any longer. He urges his companion to flee the new village master before it's too late. Another man whose clothing was wrapped and hung on a pole emerged and expressed his dismay that the new leader was only 18, calling him too young and naive. He screamed righteously, telling those who wanted to leave their leader to get lost right away. He then ran off while grinning, saying he would go first, leaving his colleagues behind. Shortly after that they smiled and looked at each other, and decided to leave. As well, Chong D sat on a wooden chair, beneath it a tiger skin rug, while his hand was placed on his head, complaining that it hurts. He continued complaining about the memories pouring into his head, and wondered if he may have been transported to another world. Chong D was just a normal university student, playing in front of his computer, with his headphones on, a strategic game called Hearts of the Mountain Bandits, when he suddenly fainted and woke up in a different world. His memories and the current body he was in were merging into one. In these memories there was a village in despair. He became the owner of this poor village. After his father passed away, Dawa was founded 120 years ago, and under its jurisdiction were 108 cities and 13 prefectures. It once ruled the sea and the land, but that was a very long time ago. Today Dawa's imperial power was weakening, and people suffered due to the endless wars that happened almost every year. Those who couldn't survive had no other choice but to become mountain bandits, and the world was filled with them. Toad Village was one of them. When the old leader was around, Toad Village was quite powerful and famous in Kinui Mountain. The old Toad leader died not long ago, and the remaining bandits left one by one, and he believed he was the last one left. Chang D sighed softly. As he sat alone, suddenly a hand reached for his shoulder and called him the village master. It was Zushenji, which surprised Chong D that he hadn't left yet. Despite being the Toad Village strategist, Zushenji's IQ was questionable, and his ideas had never been useful. Chong D promptly took Zushenji's hand in his, and expressed his gratitude for staying behind. He stood up and went on to say that he would always remember this favor. Zushenji responded while holding Chong D's hands that he was misunderstanding something. He went on to say that the Toad Village resources had mostly been depleted, and that the only thing left was a skinny horse, which he asked if he could take, because no one else wanted it. This left Chong D speechless and broken inside. As Zushenji asked for his tiger skin too, Chong D sat back in dismay and replied to take it and leave. Zushenji smiled as he held onto the rolled tiger skin rug and called for Linger to hurry up and take the horse with them, as they would be departing. Even after traveling down to the mountain they would still have to rely on it to earn their keep. Chang D sighed as he sat alone. He worried about how he would survive alone in this unfamiliar world. Suddenly a symbol appeared behind his head, and a hand emerged from it. This hand slowly stretched for his head and smacked him, which threw him off guard and made him wonder who it was. He stood up and looked back, perplexed about where he was in the place he was in. It was a vast space with pixelated sparkles floating around. A long-haired blonde female appeared in front of him, leaving him stunned. This lovely blonde lady had a pair of diamond-shaped antennas on her head. She described Chong D as a brave young man. She gazed at him and went on to say that he was finally here. Chong D inquired who she was and where this place was. The blonde girl replied while a blue diamond floated in her hand, that this was the system's subspace, and she was the spirit of the system. Then the spirit of the system with this blue diamond floated above him, applauded him for opening the hearts of the mountain bandits. This blue diamond abruptly unleashed rippling energy that caused it to explode into a tremendous amount of dazzling light. As a result, a blue pop-out screen with a loading screen emerged in front of Chong D. As he looked at it, he recalled playing Heart of the Mountain Bandits just before being transported to another world. The blonde girl affirmed his thoughts, and responded that she was also there to help him. The Toad Village owned by Chong D was a beginner mountain, with people leaving, and its population consisted of only 3 individuals. its leader, strategist and groomer, looking at the pop-out screen. Chong D was taken aback by the fact that he had obtained a system after being transported. On the screen a mission appeared. Do not let the population reach 1 and stop the people from leaving. If the mission fails, the system would disappear. After that he was surrounded by a bluish aura, while a mission was issued for him to complete or regret later, as there would be no second chances. Then the integration with the host continued, with Chong D being penetrated by bursting light. The spirit of the system referred to Chong D as a young boy full of energy, but the village's total population was extremely small, so he needed to stop the strategist and groomer from leaving, as a new mission appeared on a blue screen, instructing him to use a sincere way to stop the groomer and strategist from leaving. Chong D replied that he could try to complete the mission, but he was unsure how he might leave the system's subspace. The blonde girl chuckled and invited him to approach her. She grabbed Chong D and tossed him up in the air, saying, "There you go." Chong D screamed, his eyes welling up with tears. Moments later Chong D sweated hard as he wondered, while his hands and knees were on the floor, whether it was all a dream. Suddenly, the spirit of the system whispered in his ears, that if he failed to complete the mission, he would be killed, which made fear visible in Chong D's eyes. The sun's warm rays beamed outside his home. As Chong D called for strategist Su, he hardly ran down to the forest after repeatedly calling for strategist Su and pleaded to wait for him. Chong D finally regained his breath when he caught their attention, and stopped walking away from him. Meanwhile Zushenji, with the lady and the horse beside him, questioned his village master if he regretted and wanted to withdraw his words. Chong D got distracted and locked his focus on the lady. Zollinger placed her hand on her waist and arrogantly persuaded her father to leave. Chong D blushed as he inquired about her identity. Strategist Zushenji politely replied that she was his daughter, who usually takes care of the horses, and that he hadn't seen her before. While gazing at his daughter, he thought to himself that she was quite beautiful. Chong D held on to Zushenji, mistakenly called him father, but corrected himself, then told him that he had thought of something. Without him the village would be nothing. He went on to say that Zushenji was amazing, and persuaded him not to leave the village, because he had worked hard for many years, and contributed greatly to the village. Zushenji on the other hand was enraged, because he assumed Chong D wanted them to die with him, but he calmly replied that he was unwilling to leave, because he was old and only saw himself as a burden. However, determined Chong D responded that after hearing his reply, he couldn't let him go, and assured them they wouldn't go hungry as long as he lived. Chong D went on to argue about which village would take them in. Zushenji responded with this questioning, how they could survive if they stayed behind. The village master proudly replied to what he was afraid of, then proceeded to request his weapon since he was going to rob someone. He then grinned discreetly, wondering what kind of reward he would receive after accomplishing his assignment. Chong D inquired about Zollinger's age and thought about his confident and handsome self. He believed in the generic man was from his past life, where the main character was typically overpowered. Zollinger was irritated as she carried an enormous axe towards Chong D, making him sweat in disappointment, because he had imagined a different weapon. He held the axe with both hands and showed his dismay, as he imagined himself as a giant with great muscles and an axe in his hand, wondering if he was supposed to be a woodcutter looking for trees that required some chopping. A pop-out box appeared indicating mission completion, stopping the strategist and groomer from leaving. As a result, Chong D was rewarded with an axe skill book, which was handed to him by the spirit of the system. He immediately integrated the skill into his repertoire. It was said that Chong Yao Jin's strong axe skills came from a fairy in his dream, encompassing proper grip, accurate chops and powerful swings. Zushenji reminded his village master that going alone was dangerous, but Chong D simply stared blankly at him, leaving Zushenji puzzled. Zushenji was surprised to learn that his village master wanted him to come along and that he would not be going alone. With the axe resting on his shoulder and a serious expression on his face, Chong D asked Zushenji if he had anything else to say. Zushenji replied that he had nothing else to say, and they both set off pulling the horse. A pop-out box appeared presenting a new mission. To carry out a successful robbery before nightfall. Success would grant him a chance at the lottery while failure would result in death. With a grave expression, Zushenji called for his village master. However, Chong D smiled shyly, and responded that he did not need to be referred to as the village master. Instead, Ching Dali grinned and insisted on being called boss. As they journeyed together, they arrived to the beautiful sunset view of a mountain surrounded by lush trees. Ching Dali raised his axe in his hand with the horse rearing up on two legs, their silhouettes etched against the backdrop of a breathtaking sunset. With the midst of a mountain covered with lush trees and a breathtaking sunset, a squad of armed soldiers was moving through on horseback and walking behind a carriage. One of the soldiers called to Warrior Lin, as they were two soldiers leading the route in front of the carriage on their horses. He warned Warrior Lin that there were a lot of mountain bandits in the area, and that they should take caution as they were escorting the fiance of the city lord's son. While Warrior Lin was thinking about the mountain bandits as they spoke, Warrior Lin responded strongly, saying that it had been too peaceful since the escort mission began, and he had been yearning for a battle, and if they tried to rob them he would give them a taste of his spear. Ching Dali and Zhu Shenji stood at the edge of the mountain road, watching the sunset fade away by the minute. Zhu Shenji advised his village master that the sun was about to set, and that perhaps no one would arrive, so they should retreat first and rob someone tomorrow. However, Ching Dali was adamant to wait. A short while later, this soldier was on horseback telling Warrior Lin about their very important escort mission, that because of his assistance this had been easy to accompany the lady of the Su family to Black Rock City, so that he could wed the young master of the city. This would help strengthen the relationship between the Su family and Black Rock City. A soldier who was walking next to a carriage told housekeeper Wang about being overly cautious, since they were working for the city lord. He proceeded by asking who would dare to harm them, while the soldiers standing next to him nodded in agreement. From a distance Ching Dali saw them and said, "Here they come." As Zhu Shenji counted the armed soldiers, he advised his village master that there were too many people, and that they should give up and return. As Ching Dali said that he understood his feelings, Zhu Shenji cast a puzzled look as he looked behind him. However, he persisted in boastfully telling him not to worry, since he would die alongside him while lifting his arm, which disappointed Zhu Shenji as he thought to himself that he did not want to die alongside him. The armed team was making its way toward the curved road, fearfully contemplating the need to find a way to escape. Zhu Shenji started sweating profusely. Zhu Shenji uncomfortably caressed the horse's rear and told Ching Dali that it was rather good, which left Ching Dali mounted on a horse staring back at him in confusion. Suddenly Zhu Shenji stabbed the horse on its rear. As a result, the horse screamed and cried out in pain, while Ching Dali yelled in panic for Zhu Shenji's name from horseback. The animal accelerated wildly and its eyes welled up. Zhu Shenji announced to the armed men that the village leader of Toad Village was robbing them, as they fled down towards the armed men in a panic. As Ching Dali and his horse approached the armed men, who simply stared blankly, Zhu Shenji went on to say that those who did not want to die had to submit or run away, leaving all their belongings behind. On the other hand, Zhu Shenji silently walked away from his village master, with sobbing eyes, saying that he was sorry since he still had a daughter to feed and watch grow up, but he would burn some incense in his memory. However, Ching Dali, still on his horse, was enraged and berated Zhu Shenji not only for betraying him, but also for announcing that he was attempting to rob them. He was also ashamed of the embarrassing nickname he had. When he got close to the carriage, Ching Dali tugged the belt tied to the bridle on the horse's mouth, causing the horse to rear up until Ching Dali managed to stop it and felt relieved. However, Ching Dali stood on horseback in front of the armed men, speechless and sweating excessively. The armed men stared at him, and Ching Dali thought that being killed by the system was a preferable option. A soldier reached for his sword, trying to comprehend that only one individual was attempting to rob them. Ching Dali responded that it was a misunderstanding, slightly lifting both palms and explaining that he was not the master of Toad Village. Then he confidently lifted his closed fist and stated that he was Zhu Shenji, a scholar, and that those who did not want to die should surrender right now, and leave all their weapons behind. While the armed soldiers were speechless, rather than startled, that a bandit had actually come to steal from them, they speculated that he may have wished to commit suicide, and believed jumping from a cliff would be a far better option. The soldiers burst out laughing, while Warrior Lin smiled beside him. Wang asks for silence from his comrades. Considering this, Wang went on to tell Chong Dali that he might not know who they were, and that his life was very valuable, and that he should think about his family and return to where he came from. A dainty hand reached outside the carriage window and lifted the pink curtain. a beautiful blue-eyed pink-haired lady emerged and glanced outside the carriage. She noticed Ching Dali on horseback. Meanwhile, Ching Dali felt stunned and mesmerized because he had never seen such a beautiful lady before. The system spirit emerged out of nowhere above Ching Dali, and smacked him strongly to wake him up from his daydreaming, and preached to him not to be a pervert. Only Ching Dali could see the system's spirit when it was outside the system's subspace, despite the fact that the host's power and experience were minimal, and he had little chance of winning a head-to-head battle. As a reddish lump grew on Ching Dali's head, he pleaded with her to stop whacking his head every time she showed up. While she answered that he was looking so foolish and stupid, the system spirit presented a pop-out box containing a hidden mission, to rob someone's fiance, and stated that the job's level was beyond his current abilities, and that he could reject the mission. Ching Dali deliberated carefully because hidden missions are difficult to obtain, implying that the reward would be greater as well. Ching Dali responded with determination that if he succeeded he would be able to have a wife, and if he failed he would die. If he did not have the guts for such a minor job, how would he become a successful mountain bandit in the future? The system spirit was disappointed since this pervert was just lusting after someone's fiance's body. Whereas Ching Dali accepted the hidden mission, Warrior Lin on horseback ordered his fellow soldiers not to scare him away, since he had finally found a robber with guts, with whom he wished to fight fiercely. Warrior Lin ordered them not to interfere, as this would be a 1-versus-1 battle with him. His colleagues applauded for him as they finally got a chance to see Warrior Lin's strength, and to witness if every rumor about him was real or not, and they requested that he not be killed in one hit, so that he could flex his skills a little more. Warrior Lin assured Ching Dali that he would not take his life. He also firmly answered not to hold back against him, as the system spirit was holding onto a pop-out box of information, explaining that his name was Lin Xiaoyu, an ordinary spear warrior, with piercing spear striking skills and the hidden attribute of becoming a great hero. Chong Dali, also on horseback, approached Warrior Lin and said that he had slain many nameless people with his axe, then asked for his name so that he could remember it, and assured him that he would not murder him, to which he replied that his name was Lin Xiaoyu. Warrior Lin also inquired about his identity, specifically whether he was the Toad village master or scholar Zushenji. Ching Dali was caught off guard by this question, and he firmly responded with a made-up name, Yongchun Island. Warrior Lin said that among 108 cities and 13 prefectures there is no place named Yangchun, and his name was weird. Chong Dali approached him, told him to stop talking nonsense, and initiated the fight. He drew his axe ferociously towards Warrior Lin, and screamed that his head was his to take. Warrior Lin used his spear to deflect his strike, but he was worried when he sensed his tremendous strength as they both glared at each other. Chong Dali swung his axe again, this time within a blaze hit, causing Warrior Lin to tumble from his horse and drop his spear. The spear spiraled before hitting the ground, and Warrior Lin fell on his back. As well, Ching Dali continued riding his horse towards them, with an axe in his hand. This left the armed soldiers speechless. Ching Dali sprang from his horse and kicked the carriage driver. The beautiful lady in the carriage was worried. Ching Dali struck the horse on the ass with his chopping strike, which resulted in the horse weeping and screaming in pain, causing it to run wild. As he gripped the belt to control it, they dashed towards the troops who were obstructing their path, causing them to flee. Wang yielded to chase Ching Dali down. Some of the armed troops pursued them, yet Wang still continued to scream that if the escort mission failed they would all be killed. Zushenji kept walking until he arrived at the Toad village before sundown and called for Linger. He made it inside and promptly urged his daughter to close the village door. Linger inquired as to why he returned alone and where the village master was. Zushenji called the village master an idiot, and said that if he hadn't been wise enough to run away quickly, Linger would never see her father again. Zushenji sweated abundantly as he moaned and lamented the situation. His daughter tried to console him by telling him that dead people don't come back to life, therefore he shouldn't be upset. Zushenji clarified that he was not saddened by his death, because he had such a wonderful horse, which disappointed Linger. He went on to say that this village was no longer safe for them to live in, and he ordered Linger to carefully check out and clean everything, including the garlic in the kitchen. At the same time, the armed troops on horseback were still pursuing Ching Dali and the carriage. Ching Dali screamed hurry up while clutching the horse's bridle belt. The system's spirit appeared out of nowhere above Ching Dali and asked if he wanted to draw one, because he had just completed a mission and received one lottery draw chance, to which Ching Dali agreed and drew one. Now while whipping the horse's belt, the system's spirit poked fun at Chong Dale when she asked if he wanted to whip the horse or draw the reward first, which infuriated him and he threatened to whip her. Despite this, the system's spirit remained unbothered and cute and she kept tormenting him. Ching Dali replied that he truly wanted to draw the reward first and informed her that he was in such a situation, and that if she wanted him dead he pleaded to just kill him, but the system's spirit only giggled and winked back at him. A lottery machine materialized with a snap of the system's spirit's finger, and she began to draw. She slowly shook the lottery machine, and held it in both of her arms. Meanwhile the armed troops were still chasing and riding their horses after Ching Dali, and Wang cursed the bandit and yelled that he would skin him alive. The system's spirit was still holding onto the lottery machine while Ching Dali panicked and begged her to hurry up, since he didn't have much time because of those obnoxious-looking hunting for his life, referring to the armed soldiers. The system's spirit praised Ching Dali when a ball came out from the lottery machine and opened. He gained a great unknown hunter named Kinman, which surprised him because the machine could draw in humans. As they chased Ching Dali he wondered where that person was now, as there were only rocks everywhere, or whether he would fall from the sky, or if he needed to make any chance. Ching Dali chanted with his pointer finger, "Go Pikachu, I choose you," while the system's soul gazed upon him confusedly. However, that didn't work. Ching Dali kept going while gripping his axe and uttering, "I summoned you in the name of the eternal useless Sakura," while the system's soul continued to stare at him in confusion. This continued further as he gestured with his hand and said, calling for backup, "Respond quickly, gather and create a path, shine brightly, appear in front of me, warrior calling 1 2 3 respond." All the while the system's spirit looked at him in confusion. Suddenly Warrior Lin nearly struck the carriage with his spear and called for Ching Dali to return, since he was about to murder him, which caused Ching Dali's eyes to widen in fear. A figure in the distance alerted his village master not to worry, because Kin Man was on his side. Kin Man with long brown hair and an X mark on his chest stood boldly in front of them wielding a spear. Ching Dali thought to himself that the system couldn't make the reward appear out of nowhere. They had to be arranged and appear at a reasonable time. Warrior Lin on horseback leaped towards Kinman despite his best efforts to avoid him, but couldn't stop his horse. Kinman fiercely commanded him to get off. He drove his mighty spear into the horse's mouth, causing it to pour blood. With Warrior Lin on its back, the horse lost its balance and fell. Then the horse collapsed on the ground with a loud thud. Ching Dali was astounded by Kinman's tremendous strength. At the same time the armed soldiers were taken aback and left speechless. After that Wang gulped and sweated profusely. Nonetheless he raised his sword and said that they were men of the leader of Black Rock City, that if they didn't want to die, they should surrender and hand Miss Sue over to them, or else they would gather the army and wipe this town off the map. Kinman stood tall and magnificent as his mighty spear swung and struck the stone, which squarely hit Wang's face, causing him to lose his teeth. Kinman shouted furiously at him to get lost. As Wang screamed for retreat, all the armed soldiers fled as they needed to report this to the leader. Kinman approached his village master beside the carriage and informed him that he had come to work for him. Meanwhile the system's spirit held a pop-out box containing information about Kinman, a great unknown hunter who at age 31 possessed the skill of a 3-core plum blossom spear. He was a hunter who lived near Black Rock City. But now he was wanted by Black Rock City, so he moved to Toad Village to work under the village master. His backstory involved living with his wife near Black Rock City. However, when the leader of Black Rock City heard that Kin Man's wife was exceptionally beautiful, he sent his men to Kin Man's house while he went hunting. Kin Man's wife ran away because she did not want to sleep with Black Rock City's leader, so she jumped off the cliff and committed suicide. When Kinman returned it was already too late. Enraged he rushed towards Black Rock City and killed more than 10 guards, making him wanted in Black Rock City. After that, he decided to work for the village master of Toad Village. A few moments later Ching Dali realized that this was merely a character's backstory for him, but for Kin Man it was all real life, and living in a war-torn era was extremely difficult. Ching Dali was stunned when the skinny horse he had dumped returned on its own, and instructed Kin Man to mount it. Both Ching Dali and Kin Man reached for their horses' backs. The breathtaking sunset remained with them as they headed back to Toad Village. Zushenji took a string of garlic and told Linger to carry the pot and check if anything had been left behind. Meanwhile, Linger told her father that she couldn't carry any more weight than she already did. With a garlic necklace around his neck, Zushenji said that he couldn't carry them, but they wouldn't survive without it either. Linger looked back as a voice emerged and asked them if they needed a horse. Ching Dali and Kin Man arrived on horseback with a carriage at Toad Village, which Linger recognized as the village master. Zushenji's eyes widened and his mouth dropped when he realized that his village master had not died. He promptly covered his mouth, bowed slightly and expressed his relief, as he would have blamed himself for being too useless and unable to assist him. He continued by mentioning that he didn't need to be chased away because he was a burden and would leave on his own, causing Linger to sob from behind. Ching Dali looked at them and asked where Zushenji was heading. He mocked Zushenji by recounting how when he attempted to rob them, he had given his name as Zushenji to the armed men who were currently searching for him. This caused Zushenji's mouth to drop, and irritated, Zushenji, with clenched fists and a visibly sweating and trembling body, adamantly retorted that despite being elderly he still had his brain to come up with solutions. While Linger sobbed behind him, he went on to explain that he would always be available to assist Ching Dali and gave a thumbs up. Reluctantly, Ching Dali agreed and instructed Zushenji to come and help him pull the horse. He introduced Kin Man to Zushenji and encouraged them to get along. Ching Dali directed Langer to feed the horses, Kin Man to prepare supper, and strategist Zhu to transport the person in the carriage to his room. He winked as he announced his intention to sleep with his wife. Quietly, Zushenji boarded the carriage and began moving right after Ching Dali reflected to himself that he had completed the covert mission, but had not yet checked the rewards. Ching Dali then snapped his fingers to call the system, so the spirit of the system appeared above Ching Dali, but she reprimanded him for being rude, giving him a whack. With her hands crossed, she reminded him to refer to her as the system goddess, to which Ching Dali agreed, sporting a reddish bump on his head. Afterward, the system goddess commended him for successfully robbing someone's fiance. She went on to explain that his reward was the awakening of someone's hidden attributes. As her palm was enveloped in golden energy, the system's goddess then stated that it was up to him to determine whose characteristics would be awakened. Ching Dali was perplexed by the unexpected awakening, but was interrupted. Zushenji stood in front of Ching Dali, who realized that the man's hidden attributes had been awakened. When the moon shone brightly on the Kinnu Mountains, it was nearly dark. The defeated armed soldiers temporarily camped out with bonfires somewhere in the Kinnu Mountains. Commander Wang asked his fellow soldier whether he wanted to live, to which his soldier replied that he naturally wanted to live. Wang pressed him once again on how many mountain bandits had attacked them earlier. His fellow soldiers were speechless as they gazed upon each other. Then one of them replied that there were 100 bandits, and he was sweating heavily. Wang was upset when he heard only 100, and he aggressively refuted his fellow soldiers' allegations, stating that he had seen 300 with his own eyes. As Wang sat near the bonfire, he continued his story of how they risked their lives and fought the bandits, managing to kill only some of them. He mentioned that warrior Lin had gone missing while Miss Su had been abducted. While his fellow soldier sat silently across from him, Wang told everyone that if they wanted to live they needed to get some wounds on themselves, which they did by wrapping themselves in bandages. Then he ordered them to follow him back to the city to request reinforcements. Meanwhile, warrior Lin stood quietly with his spear next to the bonfire. Warrior Lin was disappointed that he had failed Commander Huang's request to oversee this escort operation, resulting in Miss Su's abduction. With apparent injuries on his face, Warrior Lin promised Wang that he would risk his life to save Miss Su. A few moments later, the system's goddess held onto the information in a pop-out box for Zushenji, a famous lousy strategist at the age of 49. His hidden talent was his stupid tactics, which she suggested would only result in a loss. Ching Dali would fail if he listened to him. Ching Dali felt disappointed since he expected to be a below-average strategist, but he couldn't believe he was trash even with his hidden talent. Zushenji asked his village master what was wrong with him, to which Ching Dali replied nothing and inquired what he wanted while scratching his head. Zushenji reported that he had already talked with the lady whose name is Su Yi, and she is the young master's fiancée of Black Rock City. He mentioned that his village master shouldn't have abducted her. He stated that the former village master had also meddled with Black Rock City and died. if their current village master were to do the same, they would face certain death if they attacked again. Linger, holding a bowl, informed her father and the village master that dinner was ready. Qing Dali gave the command to gather Qin Man, Zhu Shenji and Linger to discuss the situation over supper. They gathered around and sat near the bonfire with their supper hanging on a pole, as Qing Dali asked if anyone knew what was happening in Black Rock City, so Qin Man replied that he had some knowledge about it. Qin Man described Black Rock City, which is 150 miles away from Toad Ridge, and ruled by Han Huzha, a womanizer ruthless tyrant, with 5,000 elite troops. Zhu Shenji lamented the 5,000 versus 4 people gap, and proceeded to ask his village master if he thought they could win. Qing Dali sarcastically replied, asking what Zhu Shenji wanted him to do. Send her back, admit they were wrong and request mercy. He asked Zhu Shenji if he believed that would work, so Zhu Shenji gave in and told him to disregard what he had said. Zhu Shenji and Linger looked dumbfounded, their mouths dropping, when Qin Man recommended that instead of being on passive defense, they should take the initiative to attack first, because he believed they could capture Han Huzha with a 70% chance of winning. Zhu Shenji leaned in closer to Linger, suggesting that they should go, because they would otherwise die. Linger sobbed, saying they were already dead. Qing Dali insisted that escape wasn't an option. He went on to explain that firstly, Black Rock City was not lacking in women, and they wouldn't attack with all 5,000 elite troops. At most they would send 100 or 200 men. Secondly, the city was 150 miles away, and it would take them 5 days to travel back and forth. In those 5 days they should be able to set up an ambush and win the battle. The system's goddess appeared and notified that Qing Dali had activated a new mission, to rely on his village and fight off the enemy attack. She added that the mission's difficulty was greater than the mountain power. Qing Dali went on to explain that third, his father died while fighting them, and that he must avenge him. Besides, Qin Man and Han Huzha had bad blood. If they don't take revenge, how could they have the face to live peacefully? Qin Man stated that they had to secure the village no matter what happened this time, and Qing Dali responded that there are 2 ways leading to Toad Ridge. Zhu Shenji explained that the smaller road had a valley in between, so carriages couldn't use that road, but the other one might be used if they were going to ambush, so they needed to know their path. Qing Dali remembered Zhu Shenji's hidden talent for terrible tactics. If he listened to him they would perish, so he asked him which way the enemy might take. Zhu Shenji with confidence chose the official road while holding a smoking pipe. While Qing Dali already knew which road they would take, the village master kept asking Zhu Shenji if he thought they could win, which left him puzzled. Zhu Shenji then stated that he was sorry, but he believed they would be wiped out and no miracles would happen, so Qing Dali responded that he believed they stood a chance to win, and that a miracle may occur. Qing Dali grinned as he continued, saying that even though it seemed like they had no chance, at first when he thought to himself about Zhu Shenji being useless, he merely needed to do the opposite of what he says, effectively ruling out the useless choice. A few moments later, the moon shone brightly and was partially obscured by thin clouds in the dusk sky. Someone reflected on the fact that God had not given up on her yet, and that toilet paper, used tissue paper and torn clothes might be reused. It was Miss Su who sat on the bed alone in silence. When Qing Dali entered her room and encouraged her to eat something, she was surprised but remained silent. Meanwhile, Qing Dali thought to himself that Miss Su is such a beautiful woman with a nice body. Suddenly Qing Dali's alter ego had different thoughts, because it desired her and could do whatever he wanted with her. The real Qing Dali, on the other hand, covered his mouth as he objected to his evil thoughts. He couldn't do such things with her because he was a decent guy in the past, and was afraid that if he crossed that line he would become a villain. The system goddess appeared and praised Qing Dali as a righteous young man. She said that because of his kindness a new mission had been triggered, which was to win her heart without using violence. She stated that only a real man could rule the world, but first he needed to be able to win girls' hearts by being a gentleman. Qing Dali offered her food thinking that she wouldn't be able to sleep that night. He mistakenly referred to her as Yining but then corrected himself and addressed her as Miss Su. He asked whether she too couldn't sleep that night. Miss Su asserted that her family was one of the 4 great families of Fallen Leaf City. She said that she would offer him gold as payment if he would allow her to go back. She went on to say that she was also the fiancé of the young master of Black Rock City, so she warned Qing Dali of the consequences if he harmed her. Ching Dali explained that there must have been a misunderstanding. He had a vendetta against the Black Rock City leader and had captured Miss Su to lure him out. He promised to set her free once everything was over. Miss Su labeled Ching Dali a liar and stated that men only wanted to sleep with her, claiming he was no different. Ching Dali stared silently as Miss Su pleaded with him not to harm her, and promised to meet his needs whether it was gold, food or something else. Suddenly the system goddess emerged with a pop-out box of information about Miss Su-ing, who despite lacking talent, possessed good insight. Ching Dali thought to himself whether he should try to convince her. Ching Dali told Miss Su and stood in front of her that he knew he was only a violent bandit in her eyes. But if he could live quietly, why would he become a bandit when he also wanted to be a scholar or a warrior? He then looked out the window where the full moon shone brightly, with thin clouds and a sea of stars. He continued to say that he used to hold books in his hands, and wanted to learn literature, fight like warriors, win titles, and travel the world crossing seas. However, he encountered some greedy pigs who treated others like scum. He began to wonder why the world was like this, and why people were so easily swayed by greed. Miss Su sat silently as Ching Dali went on saying that he wanted to save this world, so that all citizens could live in peace, and right at that moment as Ching Dali extended his hands towards her, he expressed how he wanted to grab her hand as he asked her if she would help him achieve his dream. Miss Su said that although what he said could be a lie, she had the impression that he wouldn't hurt her, and was perplexed as to why she had this perception. She went on to explain that Chong Dali could tell her whatever he wanted as long as he didn't harm her, and she would try her best to comply. But Ching Dali remained silent for a moment. Then Ching Dali sat down near the table, and asked her if she could tell him more about what had happened in this world, which was likely the only sincere statement he had made since entering the room. They faced each other in the room, as Ching Dali was determined to learn everything about this world, including the fact that this girl was a merchant's daughter. Time had passed and Ching Dali bid farewell as he cupped his fist. After that, Miss Su read a poem by candlelight, with a sword in hand, the ambitious man to rescue the people of the occupied land. Miss Su thought about the Wu hook, which could be a sharp weapon, Guanchang, and where the empire with only 13 prefectures had originated from. She knew that Ching Dali was lying, but these words were too beautiful, and she praised such an amazing poem. She believed that if she could showcase this in the so-called talent poem meeting, it would definitely shock everyone. Meanwhile, Kin Man stood silently outside. He drew the attention of his village master. Ching Dali was surprised when he saw Kin Man and asked him what he was doing there. Then he thought to himself if Kin Man had a habit of listening to people's private conversations. Kin Man cupped his fists and expressed how he felt that the village master was no better than those dirty bandits. But after he heard them speak, he was deeply moved by his words, and since he had a dream, Kin Man was willing to risk his life to make it come true. Suddenly the system goddess appeared and told Ching Dali that he had unknowingly achieved Kin Man's hidden mission, which was that Kin Man always had a heartache since his wife and children were taken away from him, and by treating Su-ing with courtesy he gained his trust. Ching Dali, with his hands crossed, looked at the pop-out screen. He thought that abducting Miss Su was actually no different from the actions of the Black Rock City's leader, so Ching Dali assumed that if he had hurt her, Kin Man would have been the first to kill him. Realizing it would not have been so easy to gain the trust of a strong person and make him loyal, the dawn arrived at Toad Village, and Linger dashed off to inform the village master that someone was attacking their village. This surprised Ching Dali because he did not expect them to arrive quickly, so he asked how many individuals were there. Linger blushed as she replied that there was just one with a spear, and that he was rather handsome. Outside the Toad Village, warrior Lin rode his horse and demanded that the Toad Village dirty bandits come out and face their demise. He went on to say that if they had hurt Miss Su in any way he was going to kill them all. All four of them came outside and looked for their attacker, and Ching Dali just scratched his head and called him an idiot for coming. Ching Dali then gave Kin Man the command to chase him away. Warrior Lin advised Kin Man as he approached him to bring his weapon and horse, assuring him that he would not take advantage of him, but Kin Man confidently replied that there was no need. Suddenly Kin Man sprang high, trampled the horse on its head, and grasped Warrior Lin's face with his bare hands, leaving Warrior Lin dumbfounded. Kin Man then raised his hand while still gripping Lin's face with his bare hand and exclaimed that he was weak. Warrior Lin hysterically responded to get his hands off him, so Kin Man flung Warrior Lin out with his spear. As a result, he blasted past the trees while yelling that he would return. Eventually Warrior Lin descended from the Toad Ridge. Ching Dali felt soft-hearted and told Kin Man not to harass him and to let him take his horse back when he returned, which he promised to do because Kin Man would do as his village master said. Ching Dali's eyes widened as he was informed that he had successfully defended the attack on the village, and that the reward would be provided. The system presented him with a golden lion chest, which made him question if something was wrong. He wondered if it was intended to be a difficult mission that he had finished so easily. It shouldn't have been so easy, otherwise the system would not have indicated a higher difficulty level. Ching Dali wondered if it could be a bug in the system. Suddenly the system goddess handed Ching Dali scroll with a list of his rewards. He was rewarded with a metal spear, upgraded horses in the mountain, a healing effect within the mountain, and a random skill upgrade for one person. This made Ching Dali feel very lucky. He was also awarded 10 farming lands. And when Ching Dali reached for his legs, which were feeling sore from being so joyful and excited, he thought it felt like killing an ant and earning gold in return. He felt like he had won the lottery, or been blessed by Lady Luck. The rewards kept pouring in with 10 wooden boxes and so on, which prompted him to ask what was wrong with the system. The system goddess stated that she was simply a spirit, and that bug or no bug, it wasn't within her control. She wouldn't be chastised for it. Therefore she recommended he take them outside the system's subspace. Ching Dali bowed slightly with a blank look, but he was amazed. So Zhu Shenji asked him what was wrong with him. Right after, the system goddess presented Ching Dali with a new mission, which was to defend the village against the second attack. With the mission complexity exceeding the village's existing power, Ching Dali sensed that the real attack was getting closer, and that the rewards were only a minor consolation before the real chaos began. On the other hand, Zhu Shenji knew that his village master had gotten himself a wife, and he advised him to get a hold of himself as his legs were shaking. So Ching Dali told him to shut up about it. Meanwhile, a spear landed on the ground as he told himself to be on guard, as he was in a real life and death conflict. Lin the warrior was traveling over the mountains with his spear in hand. Warrior Lin resolutely stood despite evident injuries and torn garments and chuckled that he was back. As the warrior Lin continued to fight them, Zhu Shenji became enraged and suggested that they simply murder him this time, which enraged Ching Dali. Ching Dali branded Zhu Shenji a fool and stated that Warrior Lin was their benefactor, and that whoever wanted to kill him had to first kill him. Ching Dali continued to be friendly to Warrior Lin, asking if he was hungry and if he wanted to come in and eat something, claiming that their food tasted very good and asking if he wanted to try it. This left Zhu Shenji puzzled. Warrior Lin stood bravely from afar, his spear thrust into the ground. He yelled back to the dirty bandits not to talk nonsense and come at him, and that this time, he would not use his horse and weapon but would fight with his bare hands. While Ching Dali ordered Kin Man not to kill Warrior Lin, Ching Dali insisted that Kin Man be gentle and control his strength, which Kin Man assured his master. While standing in front of Kin Man, Warrior Lin challenged him to combat. Then, out of nowhere, Kin Man sprang. Promptly, he hit him with one hand, and as a result, he flew back again. Ching Dali asked Warrior Lin if he was okay and said he would wait for him to return if his health improved. On the other hand, the system goddess appeared with a scroll of rewards for successfully completing the second defense mission, such as a rewarding mountain spring, 10 blood pills, a bonus village skill, 10 sickles, and 5 wooden boxes. However, these did not impress Ching Dali because they were obviously mediocre compared to the first reward. Meanwhile, Warrior Lin traveled slowly on the steep route towards Toad Village with a wooden staff and suddenly triggered the third mission to defend the town for the third time. When he arrived at Ching Dali's location, the village master asked whether he was okay, to which he answered until Miss Su was released. Warrior Lin, despite having bumps, noticeable bruises on his face, and missing teeth, insisted on never stopping and coming back. Ching Dali shook his head as he told Kin Man to be gentle with him. Kin Man punched Warrior Lin once more, and the third defense was successfully completed, and they were rewarded. Warrior Lin reappeared again with apparent bruises on his face, which triggered the fourth mission for them to defend the village for the fourth time, and then they were rewarded. Every time Warrior Lin appeared, a mission would be triggered, and they would be awarded again after defeating him repeatedly. A few moments later, Lang'er asked her village master if they could return because she was hungry, but Ching Dali told her to wait because he knew Warrior Lin wouldn't give in to him. The system goddess emerged with a pop-out box when Ching Dali completed 10 defenses without any deaths, with a hidden attribute of increasing charisma for males but being ineffective for females. The system thought that a kind-hearted person's fortune would be good because their righteousness would attract more and more teenagers who share their sense of justice. Ching Dali questioned himself about why he had to play the nice guy card. He stood there and waited, wondering why Warrior Lin was late this time. Shortly, he sat down, believing that he would not give up easily. Ching Dali became concerned when he thought that Warrior Lin had been attacked by some nasty individuals. He urged them to stay put while he went down the mountain looking for him. As the sun set, Warrior Lin stood near the edge of the cliff with his wooden staff, wishing to become a hero with his spear alone and save the world while creating a peaceful world free of war. He let go of his wooden staff as he continued to be humiliated by the bandits, like a frog in a well, losing not only his horse but also his spear. He cried as he vowed that he would die today and that perhaps, in his next life, he would become a hero whose name would be recognized throughout the room, while tears streamed down Warrior Lin's cheeks. Ching Dali coughed and told him to choose one. The defeated Warrior Lin was enraged at this bastard bandit when he made a joke out of his misery. Even if he wasn't as skilled as he was, he would rather die than be humiliated by him. Ching Dali said that he had heard what he had said and that he was an honest guy, but that a young, dumb man would die for his ambitions and dreams, whereas a real man would live his ideas in a humble manner. As he listened further to Ching Dali, this surprised Warrior Lin, who had thought he was brave. Ching Dali added that he knew Lin despised bandits, but he also had a dream and used to be a man full of ideas. He then inquired whether he would like to hear about his hopes and dreams. Continuing his speech, Ching Dali said that he once wanted to learn more about literature, fight like a warrior, and win titles. A man who did not bring his Wu-hook obtained Guanshang of 50 prefectures with a poem, like with a sword in hand, the ambitious man to rescue the people of the occupied land. He went on to say that he wanted to travel the world and cross seas, but then he met some greedy pigs who treated others like scum. He began to wonder why the world was like this and why people were so easily swayed by greed. Ching Dali continued by saying that he wanted to reconstruct this world and dreamed of saving it, allowing all citizens to live in peace. Right at that moment, Ching Dali smiled and extended his hand towards him, saying he wanted to grab his hands and ask if he would help him achieve his dream. Warrior Lin was amazed by the words that came out of the mouth of a bandit. His eyes then drifted closed as Ching Dali continued to inquire whether he could possibly help him fulfill his dream. Warrior Lin lost his sense of balance and was about to drift into oblivion when he questioned whether he was dreaming about how this young man who had such a righteous dream became a bandit. As Warrior Lin continued to wonder if his lack of insight led him to believe he was evil, he sank closer to the edge. Ching Dali grasped Warrior Lin's hand and caught him as he passed out. He placed him down on the ground and assessed that he had serious injuries, yet he was still attempting to rescue Miss Su. A few moments later, a towel, water basin, and a bowl of medicinal soup were placed on the floor. Warrior Lin lay down with a cloth covering his body and a bandage on his head while Ching Dali asked Zushenji if the village had any more medication. Zushenji stated that he had been swept away by the gangs who had left a long time ago and questioned whether he had any fear of Warrior Lin because he could be a spy. But Ching Dali responded that after hearing him, he felt he could trust him. Ching Dali was concerned that if he couldn't reduce the inflammation, he would die, so he used the blood oil to treat Warrior Lin. Then he summoned Linger and instructed her to bring out the shovel and hoe. Afterward, Linger presented him with these two heavy tools. Ching Dali received the materials he saw while Zushenji was perplexed as to what he would do with them. Led by Ching Dali with Linger and Zushenji, they marched to look for treasures. However, Zushenji was opposed since he believed there would be no treasures remaining in the village and urged them not to destroy the land. He found the blood pill provided by the system and instructed them to feed it to Warrior Lin. At the stable, Ching Dali informed Kin Man that the black horse would be his, to which Kin Man thanked him. After this, a pop-up box of information emerged, revealing that the yellow horse had an escape skill, and the black horse had a charged skill. Also, Linger discovered a metal spear on the road outside, as she had shown to her village master. Ching Dali got a burnt copy of Zushenji's Black History and examined the map carefully, wondering who designed this terrible map. He discovered that it was, as expected, Zushenji. Kin Man found a military drum hidden among the rocks. Meanwhile, Linger found a dust-covered flag under the table. Moments later, she was astounded and wondered whether it was the work of a ghost. At the well, which had been abandoned for 10 years, began to spew out water. Later, Ching Dali presented the spear to Kin Man to use as a weapon. Kin Man was astounded because he had only dreamed of having an elite spear like this, and that his spear skill could be upgraded to a whole new level. A pop-up box emerged proclaiming that he was the top bandit in the Toad Village wielding a 3-core plum blossom spear. The system goddess appeared with a pop-up box containing a lengthy list of rewards for that day, such as a spear, common armor, blood pills, war drum, flag, wine, and sickles, map, scribe cloth, farmland, well, mountain spring, skills upgraded, horses heal immunity. However, a disappointed Ching Dali because there was no sword for his dream of becoming a Miriam swordsman, and he felt hopeless. While Zushenji lifted a small entrance hidden beneath a haystack that led to a basement, they unlocked it with a step and walked inside to find out. Finally, they found the 50 wooden boxes piled up, and as Zushenji was climbing down the stairs, he asked his village master if the old master had left him some heritage. Zushenji stood next to the stack of wooden boxes and asked Ching Dali whether these were the old village master's savings, to which he answered that he wasn't sure. When Ching Dali invited him to open them and see what was within, both of their eyeballs radiated crimson light as they smirked sinisterly. Ching Dali washed his face with water to wipe away all the bad luck. When he opened a wooden box, light burst out and he remembered drawing numerous SSRs over the years in excitement of something coming out, whether it was a famous beast, beautiful girls, or legendary weapons. However, he did acquire one box of stone, which was essentially trash. While the system goddess smiled and gestured thumbs up, Ching Dali felt frustrated and cursed as he gazed at the stone in the palm of his hand, knowing he couldn't change his fate. Zushenji offered to open one box for his village master, but Ching Dali declined because he was certain his luck was worse than his. Zushenji opened a wooden box and wondered what it contained. Ching Dali examined it with his hand and declared it to be gunpowder while Zushenji inquired if this black substance was edible. Ching Dali then told Zushenji to open all the boxes and see if there were any more gunpowder boxes. When they opened all of the wooden boxes, they found 10 boxes of gunpowder, 20 boxes of trash stone, and a pile of broken weapons and torn clothing, as displayed on the system goddess's pop-out box. Ching Dali smiled as he realized they could rely on the gunpowder and mountain roads to defend against the Black Rock City attack. Chang, who had already left the basement, told Zushenji to keep the boxes since he still needed them. However, Zushenji, who was about to exit through the small basement door, offered that they would make good firewood in the winter. He threatened to fire him if he broke any of these boxes and then inquired where the village field was. Zushenji responded that it was at the back hill and had been deserted for many years and asked why he was asking about it, to which Ching Dali replied that he wanted to go and take a look. The full moon was visible at night, and Zushenji complained that it was already late and asked why they were walking so far to see a deserted field, to which Ching Dali replied to go call Kin Man and Linger. All of them walked past a grassy field surrounded by a stone mountain. Zushenji pointed out that he threw some wheat seeds there during the spring. Zushenji was doubtful that anything would grow there because it was a wasteland, but they arrived at a flourishing wheat field. Seeing it with his own eyes, Zushenji was astounded. He stepped through it, saying "God bless us," while Linger was being scolded for running around and perhaps knocking down the wheat sprouts. The system goddess emerged and confirmed that the 10 farmlands had been accounted for. Kin Man explained that if they harvested these 1,000 pounds of grain, they would be able to survive the winter. He went on to say that the straws could be burned to keep warm and that they needed to harvest them quickly because the rainy season was coming soon. Zushenji and Linger knelt in gratitude, thanking God for his grace and virtue while Ching Dali stood from a distance. He thought that not all bandits were evil, they were just living in a war-torn era. They were young and old people cultivating land for food, and sometimes they even went down to the mountain to buy living necessities. For example, these three in front of him were forced by life to become bandits. Zushenji was a scholar in the village below the mountain. His greatest leisure was to earn money to buy wine and drool while staring at the widow's breasts. But there are always evil people in every world. One day, the bullies of the village were eyeing Linger, sometimes even trying to forcefully grab her. After rejecting them several times, one day, Zushenji invited the bully to his house. Zushenji added that Linger was fortunate to be with him, and he hoped he could also be fortunate in the future. He laughed with them, helped them become an adult, closed the door, and made them feel comfortable. After the bully got drunk, Zushenji chopped off his head. He burned his house and brought Linger along with him. After many twists and turns, they ended up in Toad Village. Perhaps that was the one and only time Zushenji's scheme succeeded, but Ching Dali also thought that his scheme was amazing. While Linger and her father sat in the wheat field gazing at the full moon, Linger wanted to harvest some wheat and make some pancakes for them. However, Zushenji reminded her not to be extravagant and suggested that she make pancakes with elm leaves so that they could be eaten for a few days. Linger replied that she was hungry and wanted to go with him, but Zushenji did not want to rush because of the beautiful field inside Toad Village. Ching Dali was looking at a grayish flag with red stripes on it, while Zushenji asked whether it was theirs, which he thought was sewn into someone's pants. Ching Dali responded that he had been meaning to ask who designed the flag and what the egg on top of the toad meant. Zushenji explained that it was not an egg but a heavenly toad swallowing a moon. While Ching Dali placed his hand on the flag, he instructed Kinman to hang it. Kinman promptly jumped from the ground to the roof and then to the pole. After hanging the flag, Kinman jumped back down to the ground and joined Ching Dali, Zushenji, and Linger. Though the full moon was obscured by thin clouds, it shone brightly as the flag waved in the breeze and Kinman stood looking up. Someone thought they could survive the winter with a lot of food as long as they could successfully defend against the attack. That person believed it was their territory and they wanted to protect it. It was Ching Dali, and that marked the beginning of his mountain village. The system goddess appeared and said that the flag was hung so that the heroes who had heard of his battles would come and become his subordinates. She delivered Ching Dali a new mission, which was to increase the mountain's population to 100 with the reward being one lottery draw. It was a clear morning at the city lord's mansion when someone narrated how they had arrived at Toad Ridge where there were hundreds of bandits commanded by a leader who called himself the Toad King. Commander Wang knelt in front of the city lord with girls standing behind him, and a man sat alongside the table on the side. Commander Wang expressed his anger at their actions and how he had rushed towards them, while the city lord remained silent. Commander Wang began to sweat heavily as he explained that while they were fighting the bandits, a guy named Zushenji rushed out. The man sitting alongside the table inquired whether there were always so many bandits at Toad Ridge. Commander Huang sobbed and responded that there were at least 200 people, and they called themselves Yuan from Yongchan. He then lowered his arms to the ground and continued saying that not only did he try to protect the young master's fiance from the bandits, but he was terribly injured and allowed her to be robbed. He believed he deserved to be punished and killed. The city lord agreed and ordered him to be killed. Someone caught the city lord's attention while they were dragging Commander Wang away. A young man emerged from behind the towering red curtain and told them to wait as he pleaded with his father to allow him to lead the troops on Toad Ridge and save Miss Sue. But his father responded that she was just a bitch and that daddy would find a new one for him. This young man bowed his head with both hands, begging his father to allow him to lead the troops because he couldn't call himself a man if he couldn't protect his wife. Tea was poured into the city lord's cup, and he then asked how many soldiers his son wanted. The city lord almost spat out his tea when he heard his son say that he wanted 2,000 soldiers. The man sitting alongside the table was shocked by his young master's remarks, and he responded that 2,000 soldiers would require a large consumption of food and supplies to travel with the supplies. They would need a lot of horses and troop arrangements and a road to choose. Most importantly, there were only about 300 bandits, and he pleaded with his young master to reconsider. But the young master insisted that he had thought of everything and that he would prefer to overwhelm them with power. While the lady poured tea for the city lord again, he explained that Black Rock City had only 5,000 men and he couldn't give him more than 1,000. The young master then demanded that he would like to have 200 cavalry, 200 archers, 300 swordsmen, 100 armored knights, and 200 spearmen. He confidently explained his strategy, saying that cavalry could chase after bandits who would run away, archers could shoot the bandits from far away providing support for the troops, armored knights could block the charge impact by the bandits, and the swordsmen and spearmen would attack those bandits when their ambush was blocked. It would be a piece of cake. While his son turned his back and slowly walked away, his proud father pointed out that this was expected of his son because he had a dream of leading troops to war and he could try it this time. The city lord went on to say that Commander Wang should go and redeem himself by following his son to war. Commander Wang thanked the city lord for his kindness and then bowed down. In his mind, he thought that having his head chopped off there might not be a bad choice since there were only 2 bandits. He could only wonder if the young master saw that. When they left, the city lord asked the strategist for his thoughts on his son's plan, to which he replied that in the mountain and forest, cavalry couldn't display their full potential, and since it was a long-distance travel, armored knights would not be suitable. There was no point in using those troops. He went on to say that bandits were typically passive defenders, so overwhelming them with numbers was useless, and that the young master's plan was full of holes. But the city lord was aware of these facts and wondered why he was allowing the young master to act rashly. The city lord said that his son admired the general, that he studied the art of war, but that his skill lacked experience, and that the mountain ridge had already been attacked by them, that there would not be 300 bandits and that he would not lose to them with 1,000 men. He went on to say that his dream was to lead troops, so let him have some fun leading the troops in this small battle. While the strategist said that he was relieved that the city lord was aware of these things, he added that the young master was preparing to lead the troops. He then asked the city lord if he would inquire about how he planned to lead them. The city lord replied that there wouldn't be an issue and requested the girls to go back to his room as he did not want to worry about anything else and only wanted to have fun with these young girls. The city lord stood beside him with the girls' rules and added that if the strategist had ever experienced them, then he would realize that nothing else in this world was worth thinking about, which left the strategist speechless. Meanwhile, in the inner room of Toad Village, someone asked if Black Rock City didn't have a standing army. It was Ching D, who sat with maps on the floor, asking Miss Sue, who sat in front of him, why Black Rock City, with only 20,000 citizens, could manage to feed 5,000 soldiers. Ching D then inquired about the times of war and how he could gather soldiers to defend the city. Miss Sue responded that troops could be drawn from military households, but if the conflict was large enough, citizens would have to join the army as well. She also mentioned that by hand, humans had planned to train 500 standing troops, but the plan was dropped because troops require a lot of resources. Ching D then inquired about Baihan Chuan. Miss Sue said that he is the strategist in charge of everything, both inside and outside of the city, and that he is truly an amazing person. Ching D then stood up, gathered the maps from the floor, and remarked on what a terrible ruler Black Rock City had. Miss Sue asked him if he knew how to be a better city lord and manage the city better than him. Ching D replied that he did not, and Miss Sue advised them to run because there were only 4 of them and they would be faced with at least 200 soldiers. Ching D boldly replied that he now had 5 members after Warrior Lin joined them, and that he planned to defend against 500 men. Moments later, Ching D was at the small cottages inside Toad Village. He asked Warrior Lin, who looked back and stood from afar, how his body was. Warrior Lin was taken aback and addressed him as the village master. Ching D extended his hand as he replied to him about their ideals. For a moment, Warrior Lin was speechless, then they joined hands and said it was for their ideals. Under the tree, Ching D sat next to strategist Zhu, who was eating his bread. Ching D told him that he had an important task for him that would affect their chances of survival. Strategist Zhu answered that he should find someone else, as it was such an important task. Ching D proceeded by saying that this task could only be completed by him, his one and only strategist. They were going to Gao Fei, which irritated Zhu Shenji, who asked him if he wanted him to be killed so badly while eating his bread. Ching D explained that he was asking him to bring them good wine and that he wanted to inform the Flying Tiger Bandits that Black Rock City would attack Kinnu Mountain as well as the Dog Head Bandits, Bald Bandits, Apricot Blossom Bandits, Wild Boar Bandits, and others. Zhu Shenji questioned if they would trust him, to which Ching Dali responded by telling him to use his brain and make up a story. Zhu Shenji responded that he was scared because the past leader had some grudge with them, but Ching Dali assured him not to worry and that he would let warrior Lin follow him. Both of them went head-to-head when Zhu Shenji preferred that his village master come along, which enraged Ching Dali because he wanted him to put himself in danger. Ching Dali persuaded him to go while he winked and signaled with his hand that if he died, he would take care of Ling Er in his place. His face became frightening as he threatened to erase the erotic drawing he drew onto the walls of Black Rock City, which surprised and horrified Zhu Shenji. In a wagon, warrior Lin was in charge of the horses and jar hours behind him, while Zhu Shenji sat atop a haystack and Ching Dali and Qin Man stood behind them. Zhu Shenji was pissed yet stayed silent as he couldn't change his situation. Warrior Lin and Zhu Shenji departed while Qin Man questioned his village master if they would trust the strategist. He answered that it was their only choice, whether they believed him or not, it was still worth a try. A wooden box was opened and filled with gunpowder. Ching Dali checked it, loaded it with gravel and straws, and used oil cotton lines as a fuse for the bomb trigger. When he was done, he closed the wooden box with a red flag. Ching Dali carried and waved it, instructing Qin Man to toss the box of gunpowder further away as this was the last test. A huge fiery explosion erupted on the ground. Ching Dali and Qin Man stood at the back and watched the fire emitting black smoke. Qin Man expressed to his village master that this was the breath of an earth dragon. Ching Dali replied that this was the art of explosion. Outside the walls of Black Rock City, troops gathered in front of an elevated stage as the sun's warm rays shone down. The young master was glad for the clear skies, seeing it as a good omen. However, his soldiers thought otherwise and talked poorly about his good omen statements. Moreover, the sunlight beamed on them, making it unbearably hot. A soldier asked his Uncle Wang if he was coming to the war when he turned 60 this year. Uncle Wang told him to be quiet and added that they were only subjugating a few thieves and bandits, so it did not matter if he was present or not. The young master stood with his sword by his side, his hair and robe blowing in the breeze. He placed his sword against the neck of a soldier who was holding a spear nearby and inquired whether he was happy. The soldier responded with fear and confusion. The young master went on to say that he was happy for him because, in ancient times, when a famous general went to war, they would sacrifice one person. He chose him as his sacrifice. The soldier pleaded with the young master not to joke and accuse him of kidding. The young master slid his sword across his throat, asking what made him think that he was joking. As the soldier lay on the ground with tears in his eyes, he cursed for his glory. The young master stated that he would rest in peace from this day forward and that his family's name would be glorified with his name. The young master gave the command to set off with blood on his blade. Meanwhile, the soldiers stood calmly yet enraged, calling the young master an idiot. The soldiers of Black Rock City rode their horses as they headed towards the mountains, while the young master sat comfortably in his carriage with a bowl of fruits next to him and an umbrella against the heat. Commander Wang on his horse asked him why they weren't rushing to attack and why he was seated in a carriage. The young master coquettishly replied that he was not a soldier and did not need to charge into battles. The young master added that if he were to simply command his troops and only use his brain, or if he were to do hard labor, it would hinder his full potential in war. He asked Commander Wang if he now understood. Commander Wang sweated profusely as he nervously replied that he understood. The young master went on to add that he respected generals who stayed in camp and led the troops to war while his men won the battle, which left Commander Wang speechless. A few moments later, Bai Han Chuan dashed over to the city lord who was preoccupied with his young girls. He stood in front of him and told him he felt uneasy because the young city lord had been gone for a day, and that he needed to organize 100 men to go after him in case he was in danger. The city lord told him to do anything he pleased as long as he didn't disturb his enjoyment, to which Bai Han Chuan agreed. As soon as they received orders, soldiers on horseback began to gather, 100 of them ready to ride their horses outside the city, headed by Bai Han Chuan. They set off as dust billowed from their horses' hooves. Meanwhile, it was almost dark, yet the troops of the young master of Black Rock City continued to march through the mountain. Commander Wang advised the young master to take a rest because they were about to reach the mountain ridge and had been rushing for the entire day. The young master explained to Commander Wang that speed is essential, and what if the bandits attacked them while they were resting? Commander Wang went on to explain that the soldiers were tired and that they might not be able to stand still much longer, and that some of them might not be able to hold on. However, the young master bluntly stated that his troops must be brave and have great willpower since they are heading to war, and many would die, and this little fatigue is nothing compared to death, which left Commander Wang astonished and dumbfounded. A soldier on horseback approached them and informed them that there were 3 roads ahead, the official road, the mountain road, and the valley road in between. He asked which way they should choose. Commander Wang strongly advised him to choose the official road and stop asking stupid questions. But in his thoughts, he urged the young master not to take the other roads. The young master opened a scroll of war and ordered them to wait for him to check. He added that although Commander Wang had thought they should use the official way, the bandits would have known that they were coming, and would have set traps along the route, but he would outwit them. This left Commander Wang stunned and enraged. Meanwhile, abandoned in the bushes, a bandit silently and secretly watched the soldiers. He fully convinced himself that what the Toad village said was true and that 1,000 troops were on their way to wipe them out. The bandit went quickly but quietly as the moon shone brightly in the dusk skies as he needed to report it promptly. The news had spread all around the Kingmu Mountain, and all the bandits knew about it. The bandit arrived at the Flying Tiger village and ran hurriedly inside. He reported with his fist clenched that the news was true as many soldiers had come, but they did not take the official road. A man told his big brother that they didn't seem to be heading towards their village as they were attacking the Toad village. Another man added that the Toad village only had about 4 to 5 people, and why would Black Rock City have brought so many troops for them? Gao Feihu, the village leader of the Flying Tiger, responded that if only their military strategists were here, he would wait and see what happened next. The troops of Black Rock City walked down a narrow path with a tall stone mountain in between them while Qing Dali and Zushenji discreetly looked at them from above the edge of the cliff with trees between them. Zushenji informed his village master that there were at least 1,000 soldiers on their way. Zushenji looked at his village master and told him to withdraw because they couldn't fight them. Qing Dali replied that withdrawing was no longer an option because they would fight them as originally planned. While the logs were tied on the brink of the stone cliff, he went on to say that when they arrived in the valley, they would drop the locks. Lin would fire the explosives, and Zushenji, Qin Man, and Linger would toss the explosive boxes below. Zhu Shinji inquired as to why they were only blowing up one side of the valley when they could blow up both sides. Qing Dali responded that when people are cornered in a tough situation, they would display incredible fighting prowess. However, if they know there is a way out, they will not fight to the death. He further stated that unlike them, they do not have a way back. Qing Dali was informed that they would be getting out of the area and what they should do. Qing Dali was sweating profusely when he instructed them to wait a minute. He was reminded once more that their cavalry had already moved out of the line of fire. Qing Dali screamed to do it now as he swung his axe at the rope linked to the logs. As soon as the rope was cut, the logs were released and started to fall over the mountain. As the logs struck the troops, they screamed and fell to the ground with their horses. Qing Dali ordered Warrior Lin to light it. However, he hesitated while holding a fiery torch in his hand. Warrior Lin was seen trembling and sweating profusely as he remained still. When Qing Dali put his hand on his shoulder and inquired if this was not his very first killing, he answered that there were too many people present down there. Then Qing Dali became enraged. He pushed him against the tree with both hands while calling him a bastard. He sweated profusely as he yelled at him that this is war, it's not a child's playground, and war is never about being dignified or civilized. He screamed angrily that war is when you want to kill someone and someone wants to kill you. Warrior Lin was taken aback by his remarks. Qing Dali grabbed the torch and added that they would all die if they let them go. Today, from both above and below the stone mountain, there were even more explosions. Boulders began to drop from the sky as they glanced up at the falling rocks. They frightened the Black Rock City soldiers while the explosion continued and rocks fell to the ground. Someone yelled that the exit was blocked and informed the village master that dozens of horsemen had already managed to make it out of the pass. The soldiers were terrified because they believed they were surrounded by a mountain-haunting ghost. Another scorching explosion erupted from the ground, burning the soldiers as a result of its impact and causing them to go flying while the boulders kept falling. Some ran hastily. As dust and smoke rose from the ground, a swordsman soldier screamed and ordered his comrades to rush to the hill. Kin Man rode his black horse and declared that he would hold them off, while Ching Dali thought to himself that although a small portion of their army had made it to their side, it would still be difficult to defend against them. Nevertheless, he agreed to Kin Man's plan and ordered him to hold them off while Zushenji would light the pre-buried explosives and drive them away from the first line. Chong Dali commanded Linger and Warrior Lin to continue throwing explosives at them. Suddenly, a black horse stunned to the ground. It was Kin Man riding his black horse, in front of the swordsmen and spearmen soldiers, who had been assigned to kill him. Kin Man fearlessly faced them with his spear and told them his name, warning them not to pass. As the troops approached, he unleashed an enormous strike with his spear, causing the soldiers and their horses to come crashing down. Kin Man continued to attack them with his spear, which shocked them. He fearlessly told them that they were not allowed to pass. As he pierced his spear into the chest of a swordsman on horseback, the soldier spat blood from his mouth with a thought on his mind: if they were allowed to rest a bit, the outcome of the battle would be different, as he was feeling so tired. A few moments later, while the shattering explosion persisted and rocks fell down, soldiers hurriedly ran away from the narrow road. The fiery explosion erupted behind them, and someone yelled for their escape. Some were unable to avoid the explosion and, as they collided with it, spewed black smoke. The remaining soldiers ran hurriedly out and reported to the young master, frightened that there were monsters. The young master stood up in his carriage as he witnessed the blazing explosion and the black smoke it produced while his soldiers ran away from it. However, the young master gestured his hand and forcefully commanded that no one was going to run away, and that those who would try to cross that line would die. The young master was convinced and thought in his mind that he was so handsome he would turn the tide of this losing battle into victory. His frightened soldiers explained to the young master that there were ghosts on this mountain. Most of his soldiers became enraged, as they raised their fists and questioned why he wouldn't let them leave, despite the fact that they continued to run away with their weapons in their hands. The young master's eyes widened. He stood up and roared at his soldiers to go to their graves, but they ignored him and continued to run past him. The wheel of the young master's carriage broke as a result. The carriage tumbled to the ground because it was out of bounds. The young master rose amidst the chaos, witnessing the havoc wreaked on his soldiers and the stone debris scattered by the explosive impact. Commander Wang urgently implored the young master to flee, emphasizing their failure and loss of momentum. Despite this setback, he assured that they could still escape before the pursuing bandits caught up. Convinced of the need to retreat, the young master drew inspiration from the belief that, in ancient times, great generals refined their skills through defeats, acquiring valuable experience for future battles. While his frightened soldiers wept and fled, and stone debris casually flew around him, the young master remained composed. With calm resolve, he raised both hands and entrusted his sword to Commander Wang, expressing that the commander should feel honored to witness his growth after the war. Conversely, a rock landed on Commander Wang's head, but he paid it no mind, as his irritation with the young master, whom he was supposed to be grateful to, overshadowed any physical discomfort. Commander Wang, vexed by the young master's remarks, found himself at a loss for words. Driven by frustration, he abruptly shoved the young master onto his back and hurled curses, wishing for his demise. The young master, shocked by this sudden turn, was branded an idiot and urged to face his fate alone. In a selfish bid for survival, Commander Wang hastily fled, abandoning the young master to his own devices. Meanwhile, on the precipice of the cliff, Ching Dali knelt in uncertainty, unsure of the battle's outcome. In his contemplation, he feared that one person losing motivation and fleeing could incite a domino effect, triggering panic and a mass retreat. Zhu Shenji eagerly conveyed the news of victory to their village master. Buoyed by this success, Ching Dali rose, signaling Warrior Lin and strategist Zhu Shenji to join him on the battlefield. They boarded a carriage with Zhu Shenji guiding the horse, and Ching Dali and Warrior Lin, armed and ready, standing on the carriage. Ching Dali then instructed Linger to commence banging the drum, heralding their triumphant march forward. Linger gripped the stick, passionately banging the round drum as the carriage rolled onto the battlefield. The chanting to charge and annihilate echoed through the air. As they reached the scene, they found Kin Man engaged in a lone struggle against numerous soldiers on horseback. Chong Dali bellowed at the top of his lungs, offering clemency to those who wished to live if they dismounted, stating he only needed their horses. Despite the plea, Kin Man valiantly fought on, facing the pursuing soldiers alone. Amidst the chaos, another soldier, gripped by fear, urged his comrade to flee. Some troops had already abandoned their horses and were fleeing on foot. Kin Man, undeterred, continued to fend off his pursuers with his spear. Ching Dali, along with his troops and the captured horses, observed as the soldiers scattered in retreat. Seizing the opportunity, Ching Dali instructed Zhu Shenji and Kin Man to bring the horses back to the stable, while warrior Lin was directed to accompany him, as they aimed to acquire some formidable swords. Meanwhile, another faction of armed bandits, known as the Flying Tiger Bandits, gathered and concealed themselves near the battlefield of the narrow pathway in the Stone Mountains. The area was shrouded in blazing flames from the earlier explosion, emitting dark smoke. As they observed the aftermath, one bandit questioned how the Toad village could withstand the assault of 1,000 warriors, leaving their village master dumbfounded. Shortly after, Gao Feihu, the village master of the Flying Tiger Bandits, responded, admitting his own lack of knowledge and suggesting that the Toad village might have received assistance from an expert. His comrade expressed disbelief at the unpredictable nature of the world, where even 1,000 soldiers could lose to just 5 individuals. Another comrade scolded him, reminding him of his role as a mountain bandit and urging him to focus on their job. Gao Feihu, wielding his sword, ordered his brothers to charge with him as they prepared to rob the survivors. The Flying Tiger Bandits ruthlessly slaughtered the remaining soldiers and demanded that they surrender their weapons. The Flying Tiger Bandits callously forced the defeated soldiers to the ground, their elation evident as they reveled in the spoils of their conquest. One bandit, noting he hadn't changed his shoes in years, crudely demanded the soldiers' boots, proceeding to strip them down and remove their pants. In the midst of this chaotic scene, a desperate soldier pleaded, emphasizing that he wasn't gay and willing to offer anything but his virginity. The bandit, responding with a curse, made it clear that he had no interest in the soldier's virginity but simply coveted his pants. Meanwhile, Ching Dali, wielding his axe on horseback, relentlessly pursued the terrified young master of the Black Rock City, demanding the return of his sword. The pursuit continued, with Ching Dali shouting and wielding his axe, urging the young master to halt. Suddenly, the thunderous sound of galloping hooves filled the air as an immense line of soldiers on horseback arrived at the Stone Mountain, creating a deafening spectacle. Chong Dalai brought his horse to a halt upon hearing the synchronized clopping of groups of horses, suspecting the presence of elite troops nearby. The leader swiftly commanded his troops to swap their spears for swords, anticipating a potential confrontation. Hiding in the bushes, Ching Dali observed the leader, whose powerful aura left him pondering whether they were reinforcements. However, the swift arrival puzzled him. The reinforcements were led by the strategist Bai Hanchuan from Black Rock City. The young master raced furiously toward the strategist, pouring out complaints of being bullied and abandoned by his soldiers. Yet, without a word, strategist Hanchuan thrust his sword into the young master's throat, prompting desperate pleas for mercy from the young master as he tried to spare his own life. As the young master knelt on the ground, bleeding, strategist Bai commanded his soldiers to retrieve his lifeless body, signaling their departure. A pop-up box appeared, presenting information about Bai Banchuan from the system goddess. It detailed him as a top strategist, aged 52, with a modest reputation and fame, skilled in the 7 sword slashes, and possessing no hidden attributes. Reading this information, Ching Dali reflected on the contrast between Kin Man, who could face 100 opponents at once, and Bai Banchuan, a top strategist in a different league. Strategist Bai, sensing something amiss in the bushes, prompted Ching Dali to hide alongside. The strategist then ordered a retreat, leaving Ching Dali to ponder why they were abandoning the area and speculate that, unlike Zushenji, this era harbored great strategists. Ching Dali kicked a stone with his foot and cursed at the group for taking the sword he had his eye on. At that moment, a pop-up box emerged, announcing the successful completion of their 11th defense and offering a reward of 1 lottery draw, asking if he wanted to draw now. Simultaneously, the system goddess materialized with ghostly vibes, expressing her relief at finally coming out of that torturous small black room and declaring her reluctance to go back in. Ching Dali questioned this sudden change, noting that she had been energetic before. With weeping eyes, the system goddess lamented that she had been standing in front of Ching Dali, but he had only noticed her physical presence, and she hadn't given him any missions or talked to him about them. Ching Dali, feeling irritated, dismissed her concerns, stating that all she did was hit him whenever she came out, and he felt better when she wasn't around. In response, the system goddess kicked Ching Dali on the head and scolded him for locking her up in that small black room. Despite being scolded, Ching Dali remained irritated, reacted by asking whether he could use bugs the next time. The system goddess, running with a large wooden gavel, cynically asked him what he thought, while Ching Dali chuckled on his horse. The Kin Nu Mountain map featured the locations of various entities, including Black Rock City, the Dog Head Bandits, the Flying Tiger Bandits, the Wild Boar Bandits, the Apricot Blossom Bandits, the Bald Head Bandits, and the Toad Village. Black Rock City's first attack had repercussions that spread throughout Kin Nu Mountain. Among the bandit groups, the Flying Tiger Bandits, being the closest to the war area, launched the initial assault. The incident was expected to be reported to the leader of Black Rock City by the military advisor of the city. Given the gravity of the situation, particularly the death of the leader's son, it was anticipated that this event would be a major and impactful development in the region. Linger joyfully rode a white horse through the clear morning sky, exclaiming to her father that it felt like a dream. Meanwhile, Qin Man grinned silently behind her. Zhu instructed Linger to prepare the horses for the journey back to the village, while he gathered swords. Linger agreed with her father and expressed her fondness for the white horse. The leader of the Flying Tigers, Gao Feihu, accompanied by his numerous bandits, approached Zhu. He inquired whether they could provide food for all the horses they had taken, expressing a willingness to help lighten their load. Zhu, taken aback and surprised at the sight of the Flying Tiger's leader, responded by stating that it was uncommon to see him there and mentioned his early awakening. Gao Feihu then commented on their substantial gains compared to the meager profits Zhu group had earned. In a casual manner, he discussed the plan to divide the acquired horses and urged Zhu to share his thoughts immediately, causing a sense of worry in Zhu. Linger boldly asserted that the group had acquired these horses through their own efforts and questioned why they should relinquish them. Despite her father's attempts to silence her, Linger discreetly rebelled. Zhu replied, highlighting the collective hard work that had resulted in substantial profits. However, Gao Feihu disagreed, contending that although they had earned significantly, the Flying Tigers had claimed a larger share of the profits. Another bandit from the Flying Tigers, mounted on horseback, interjected, advising Gao Feihu to cease communication. He vociferously suggested that instead of negotiating for a share, they should simply seize everything from the group. Charging towards them with swords drawn, he demanded the white horse, striking it on the head and causing it to lose balance. The horse was further injured by an arrow to the head, eventually collapsing to the ground. The rider became disoriented and unable to see clearly. Witnessing the extraordinary archery skills, some of the Flying Tiger bandits were astonished, while others expressed concern for their second master. Qin Man undeterred, Qin Man drew another arrow, ready to shoot, and sternly warned them that any further steps would result in death. He aimed the arrow at their leader, who questioned whether Toad Village intended to instigate a war. In response, Gao Feihu firmly suggested a division of the profits, emphasizing their significance. He sarcastically asked if Toad Village planned to keep everything for themselves. The Toad Village members remained silent, resembling the stillness of the horse with an arrow in its head and the fallen second master. Shortly afterward, Ching Dali arrived on horseback, casually resting an axe on his shoulder. Inquiring about how to split the spoils, he surprised the troops when he called for their village master. Riding towards the Flying Tiger bandits, murmurs spread that he was the son of the former Toad Village leader and that rumors labeled him as incompetent. However, upon closer inspection, he appeared different from the hearsay. Gao Feihu pondered to himself that Ching Dali appeared surrounded but maintained a calm demeanor, wondering if he possessed the hidden trump card. Ching Dali then proposed the idea of splitting the profits and suggested a straightforward solution. He passionately argued that if he were to eliminate all of them on the spot, there would be no need to worry about dividing anything. His bold statements unsettled a Flying Tiger bandit who lashed out, condemning Ching Dali as an arrogant kid trying to act tough while being surrounded. Another bandit chimed in, asserting that even Ching Dali's father wouldn't have dared to speak back to them in such a manner when he was alive. With a challenging tone, he questioned what made Ching Dali believe he could do so. The fully armed Flying Tiger bandits became infuriated, shouting to kill Ching Dali. Unfazed, Ching Dali yelled back, cursing at them. He pointed at the bandits and provocatively asked if there were 1,000 of them in the area. Gao Feihu responded, questioning the significance of the number. In a fierce retort, Ching Dali asserted that if they were less than 1,000, he wouldn't have enough men to satisfy his killing spree. A sinister smile crept across his face, and his eyes turned red as he declared that he had already slain 1,000, questioning if it would matter to him if he killed another 1,000. The unexpected revelation left everyone taken aback and terrified. Gao Fei Hu, in his thoughts, wondered why 1,000 soldiers would cower in fear when Toad Village only had 4 to 5 people. He pleaded with Ching Dali to calm down, emphasizing that they were not there to engage in a fight. With his fist clenched, Gao Fei Hu respectfully inquired about how Ching Dali had accomplished the feat. Ching Dali chuckled loudly on his horse, causing some bandits to feel insulted as they observed in silence. Gesturing with his index finger, Ching Dali claimed to possess a divine technique. He then raised his hand, asserting that he could summon thunder. The Flying Tiger bandits looked up in anticipation as Ching Dali lifted his hand and pointed to the clear, sunlit sky. He repeated his claim of being able to summon thunder while pointing to the sky, leaving the Flying Tiger bandits puzzled and speechless. In the midst of their confusion, Ching Dali wondered if Warrior Lin could hear his words and urged him to hurry up. The Flying Tiger bandits, growing furious, dismissed Ching Dali as a lying kid and dared him to prove himself. Undeterred, Ching Dali persisted and shouted thunder once more as the armed bandits charged towards him, intent on killing him. Suddenly, a loud and fiery explosion erupted, sending stone debris flying in all directions. The debris struck some bandits on the head, shocking them, while Ching Dali maintained his composure. Deep inside, he felt a mixture of terror and relief that everything had ended smoothly. In a ferocious tone, Ching Dali demanded if anyone else wanted a taste of his thunder. This left the Flying Tiger bandits terrified and stunned. Even before the development of civilization, people had been fervently praying to different gods, burning yellow papers, and tossing them into wells to sanctify the water. It was an era filled with many believers, and Ching Dali's impressive performance was sufficient to make them believe in his abilities. Even Gao Fei Hu felt a sense of terror, yet he remained composed, thinking to himself that if that thunder had struck him, he might not have survived. He believed that Ching Dali had employed a thunder spell to repel the 1,000 soldiers, which explained why they had fled. Despite the fear, Gao Fei Hu acknowledged the effectiveness of Ching Dali's strategy. Ching Dali continued pointing his finger, commanding the Flying Tiger bandits to move aside and clear a path for him. He threatened them, asserting that they would taste his thunder if they didn't comply. The Flying Tiger bandits screamed as they hastily scrambled to make way, allowing Ching Dali to stride past them, repeatedly chanting the word thunder. Suddenly, Gao Fei Hu called out for him to wait. Ching Dali, now sweating profusely, feared he had been exposed. Turning back, he calmly asked what he could do for Gao Fei Hu, to which Gao Fei Hu replied that they had many horses and questioned if they could feed them all. Ching Dali sarcastically responded that even if they couldn't feed them, they could still eat them. As they rode back to the village with horses and loot loaded onto their carriages, the night had fallen, and the crescent moon was partially obscured by thin clouds. In a candlelit room within the city lord's mansion, the city lord remained busy in his bed, surrounded by young ladies. He held a liquor glass in one hand, and a fruit bowl sat on the side. Suddenly, the strategist, Bai, entered the room, carrying the lifeless body of the young master. The blood from the corpse dripped onto the floor as Bai urgently called out to the city lord. Kneeling down, Bai carefully placed the young master's corpse on the floor, explaining that he had been ambushed and killed by bandits. The city lord was startled and wide-eyed as he hastily got up from his bed, his body trembling with shock. He shouted for his son, his eyes welling up with tears as he hugged the lifeless body. Meanwhile, the strategist, Bai, knelt down in silence. Suddenly, he stroked his sword and unleashed a purple, electrifying 7-sword slash that struck the city lord's chest, causing blood to drip from the wound. The city lord collapsed, but he quickly rose, realizing that Bai had killed his son. Placing his palm on his bloody chest, Bai admitted to the deed, his sword emanating a purple electrifying aura as he charged towards the city lord, expressing resentment for the prolonged rule on the throne. Bai struck the city lord again, but the latter managed to dodge the attack. As Bai continued his assault, he asserted that it was now his turn to rule. In response, the city lord, in a desperate attempt to defend himself, grabbed a long torch and questioned Bai's motives as they engaged in a fierce and deadly confrontation. The strategist articulated that the current period was marked by warfare and predicted an escalating chaos in the times ahead. Bai, the strategist, further elaborated on the weakened state of the empire and highlighted that numerous heroes across the world were poised for a pivotal moment to assert dominance. However, he lamented the city lord's decline, portraying him as a purposeless individual with no ambition, indulging in pleasures like alcohol, meat, and companionship. Emphasizing the city lord's ineffectiveness, he asserted his own determination to seize the throne. While the young ladies on the bed sat terrified, strategist by, his remarks came as a shock to the city lord. As he was going to take the throne and conquer the world, the furious city lord struck back at him and reminded him that he was just a woodcutter back when he was at war with the Ring clan, and had only read a few useless books. He raised his hands and smashed right through strategist by, as he questioned him, daring to go against him. If he had not helped him back then, he would not have become the person he was. Right there, the torched head broke, and strategist by moved back, while the city lord went on to say that even if the empire was weakened, he would still be unable to take the throne. Strategist by, now kneeling with blood staining his chest, coughed and admitted his shame. Acknowledging the city lord's 37-year record of safeguarding the city, Bai recognized the well-deserved moniker of the Seventh Tiger and acknowledged the city lord's undeniable talent. Undeterred, the city lord, wielding a tall staff, dismissed Bai as nothing more than his obedient dog, expressing that if Bai couldn't serve that role effectively, he had no use for him. The city lord continued to belittle Bai, claiming that even guarding the city for a mere month would be a challenging task for someone of Bai's caliber. He further boasted about his own exploits, boasting of numerous conquests with women exceeding the number of people Bai had ever encountered. The city lord, with a claim that the people he had killed could fill a river, contended that Bai was merely a frog in a well, limited in perspective. In the midst of their furious confrontation, both Bai and the city lord screamed vehemently, charging at each other and exchanging powerful blows. The clash between these two formidable figures echoed in their mutual rage. Abruptly, a dainty hand emerged from amidst the young ladies, seizing the city lord and leaving him momentarily stunned. Taking advantage of the opportunity, another young lady swiftly jabbed a pin into the city lord's side, eliciting a scream from him. As the city lord turned to face them, his attention diverted, strategist Bai seized the moment and thrust his sword into the city lord's chest, causing blood to gush forth. The city lord screamed in agony, ultimately collapsing to the ground. Standing resolutely with his blood-soaked sword, strategist Bai understood he might not make a competent city lord, but the desire to try lingered within him. Amidst the blood-spattered scene, the city lord, murmuring something incoherent, mockingly, strategist Bai questioned the dying city lord about the cryptic words he uttered. Closing in, he leaned near the city lord, who, in his final breaths, spoke of the Black Rock City, the kingdom's gateway. The city lord cautioned against the Ring tribe invading it, as such an event would plunge the world into chaos. This revelation left strategist Bai momentarily speechless. As he stood up, strategist Bai extinguished the candlelight near the curtain, bidding an enigmatic farewell to the city that night. Subsequently, the city lord's mansion was engulfed in flames. The next morning, the warm sun rays illuminated the wheat fields of Toad Village. Meanwhile, Zushanji scolded his village master for idling around, emphasizing the urgency of harvesting the wheat before the stolen horse would starve. A basket full of wheat lay on the ground, with birds pecking at the remaining bits. Ching Dali gave up and said he couldn't do that anymore because he was tired. The wheat needed to be slashed in order to be harvested. Sweaty and exhausted, Warrior Lin couldn't believe a warrior like him would do such a thing, while Ching Dali sat and leaned on the rock complaining that his stomach hurt. He couldn't use his strength since he didn't have any energy left. Zushenji loaded the wheat onto the carriage while continuing to lecture his village master to stop being lazy. As he had already used that excuse yesterday, Ching Dali held his head and complained that his head hurt as he approached Zushenji, but this did not work with him as he continued to scold his village master to stop lazing around, explaining that if they waited for the sun to dry up the wheat it would snap at the slightest touch, and they would lose a lot of harvest that year. In the midst of the wheat field, a red beetle made its appearance, much like an idea that struck Ching Dali. It served as a reminder that he hadn't engaged in any thievery in the past few days, prompting him to embrace his identity as a bandit. Warrior Lin, sensing his village master's shift in focus, swiftly ran after him to offer assistance, leaving Zushenji in stunned disbelief. Meanwhile, in a distant part of Qinhui Mountain, a group of impoverished villagers ventured deep within. A curious son inquired of his father about the presence of bandits nearby. The father, unfazed, advised his son that if he feared bandits, he should abandon thoughts of finding a wife. Unified by their father's counsel, they decided to sell firewood and acquire a donkey, hoping it would enhance their marriage prospects. Reflecting on their aspirations, the father turned back and suggested the possibility of dreaming even bigger, owning a horse, now that their wish could be fulfilled. Hidden behind the trees, Warrior Lin and Ching Dali observed as the son argued with his father about the distinction between horses and donkeys. Curious, the father asked for an explanation just as Ching Dali and Warrior Lin leaped out, startling the father and his sons. Shocked, they dropped to their knees, their firewood beside them, pleading for mercy in the face of unexpected visitors. Chong D, bemused by their reaction, questioned why they were kneeling and instructed them to stand up. Ching Dali was intrigued upon hearing that they desired to purchase a horse. When asked about their intentions, the father explained that affording a horse was beyond their means, and their plan was to buy a donkey. With a donkey, they hoped to seek the matchmaker's assistance in finding a bride for their eldest son. Amused, Ching Dali laughed and responded that they were in luck because he happened to sell horses. He inquired whether they were excited, happy, or felt fortunate. The father admitted they didn't have much money. Anxiously, he revealed his trembling hand, displaying 2 copper coins. Ching Dali accepted the coins and then inquired if there was anything more. The father, still anxious, mentioned 4 wild vegetable breads that their mother had baked for their journey. Warrior Lin received one of the breads, and Ching Dali, curious about its taste, asked for a verdict. As Warrior Lin tasted the bread and expressed approval, he leaned in close to Ching Dali and whispered that the 2 copper coins and 4 wild vegetable breads were insufficient for a horse. In response, Ching Dali suggested that they either sell the horses or resort to a less favorable option, killing and eating them. The father, awaiting their decision with increasing anxiety, Ching Dali, in a surprising turn, proposed an act of kindness, suggesting that they sell the horse to the desperate family as a charitable deed. Warrior Lin, confirming the decision, agreed to sell the horse to them, and Ching Dali, showing a rare benevolence, acknowledged this arrangement. He even promised a discount for being their first customers, instructing them to follow him back to the mountain. The father kneeled down, tears streaming down his face, pleading for mercy. Desperate, he offered himself in exchange, emphasizing their need to preserve their family's life license. Ching Dali, with an ominous tone, placed the axe head near the father, creating an unsettling atmosphere. Instructing them to follow, he warned of the consequences if they didn't comply. The weary father and his sons reluctantly followed Ching Dali as he commanded Warrior Lin to attend to their customers. The son, anxious and curious, questioned his father about the possibility of them being killed, but his father, sweating profusely, urged him not to be a coward. Reaching the end of the steep slope in Toad Village, the son noticed his weary father's trembling legs. Questioned about it, the father explained that, in case Ching Dali and Warrior Lin intended harm, he would risk his own life to stall them, giving his sons a chance to escape. Understanding the gravity of the situation, the father advised his sons to be prepared to run. As they stood at the threshold, Ching Dali directed them to go up the mountain, signaling with a gesture upward. As the poor villager dad attempted to explain that he was willing to risk something, Warrior Lin interrupted him, questioning what he would risk. Ching Dali, leaning on the stable, challenged them to a fight and instructed them to quickly choose a horse. Surprising the poor villagers, Ching Dali then asked how many horses they wanted, confirming that he was indeed selling them horses. In an unexpected turn of events, he assured them that 1 horse would suffice. Ching Dali, his patience wearing thin, responded with subtle anger, expressing his frustration at the perceived time wasting by the villagers who initially wanted only 1 horse. Confused, the poor villager dad inquired about the possibility of acquiring 2 horses. The son, excited, smiled upon hearing Ching Dali question why they only wanted 2 horses, offering 1 for each of the 3 children. However, the father, practical and aware of their limitations, explained that they couldn't afford to feed 4 horses, leading to disappointment for his son, whose jaw dropped. Acknowledging the situation, Ching Dali reluctantly agreed to sell them 2 horses. He asked if they knew how to harvest wheat. Despite their discontent, the sons affirmed their farm job experience. Ching Dali, setting a challenge, stated that if they could successfully harvest a field of wheat before sunset, he would allow them to take the 2 horses. Under the beaming sun and clear skies, Ching Dali commanded Warrior Lin to provide the villagers with the necessary equipment, a sharp scythe, leading them to the field. Linger, carrying a bowl of food, made her way to her father. Zhu Shinji stood by the carriage, brimming with wheat, berating his village master, claiming he was becoming lazy once again. Ching Dali, seated under the shade of a tree, sipped water from his bottle next to a basket of wheat, and vehemently disagreed with Zhu Shenji's criticisms, asserting that Ching Dali worked hard. In Ching Dali's perspective, Toad Village was a source of delight, resembling a small family. Qin Man stood as a robust warrior, Warrior Lin a dependable younger brother, and Linger an industrious worker. Ching Dali mentioned having an unmarried prisoner and expressed a personal need for a wife. Zhu Shenji obviously seemed like a grumpy old grandpa, while Linger happily sat on the carriage full of wheat, expressing her fondness for the place. Warrior Lin also found comfort on another carriage amidst the wheat-filled field. The poor villagers diligently continued harvesting the wheat, with the son seeking reassurance from his father about the bandits' promise of horses. The father believed they were sincere, but cautioned that failure to finish before sunset might result in dire consequences. As the sky turned a fiery orange with the approaching sunset, the poor villager offered to help grind the wheat. However, Ching Dali declined, assuring them it wasn't necessary, and encouraged them to go pick the 2 horses. Ching Dali, Zhu Shenji, and Warrior Lin stood behind, observing as the poor villagers left with the horses. Excitement filled the air as the son of the poor villager questioned his father, wondering if he was dreaming. Taking in the surreal moment, they marveled at the fact that the bandits were allowing them to take 2 horses home. Against the backdrop of a fiery orange sunset, the poor villagers continued talking and expressed gratitude for the bandits' unexpected kindness. They found it unbelievable that not only did the bandits help with wheat harvesting, but they also ate wild vegetable bread. In their eyes, the bandits were considered benevolent, almost godlike figures. Under the blue gradient sky with the ethereal glow of the full moon, Ching Dali, Zhu Shenji, and Qin Man sat by the bonfire. The tranquil scene was interrupted when Warrior Lin arrived with another soldier who informed their village master that someone wished to join them. Curious, Ching Dali inquired about the newcomer's identity. As the soldier stepped forward, Ching Dali recognized him as Commander Wang. Commander Wang began narrating the miseries and pain of his life, sharing how, upon escaping death, he returned to Black Rock City only to find chaos. The city lord had died, and a conflict between strategist Bai Han Chuan and the loyal guards of the city lord had ensued, resulting in the death of anyone associated with the city lord. Realizing that he might not escape unscathed, Commander Wang decided to flee to Fallen Leaf City. Coincidentally, on his journey, he encountered Warrior Lin, who was contemplating a robbery and suggested that he should join Toad Village. Ching Dali, taken aback by the revelation, asked if Commander Wang was claiming that strategist Bai Han Chuan had killed Han Hujue and assumed the role of the city lord. Commander Wang confirmed this and added that strategist Bai was spreading rumors, asserting that Ching Dali had murdered Han Hujue and vowing to avenge him by killing Ching Dali. Appalled by the audacity of the accusations, Ching Dali couldn't fathom how strategist Bai was so shameless. He pointed out that Toad Village only consisted of 5 people and questioned how they could possibly send anyone to kill him. Commander Wang explained that the strategist had fabricated stories, claiming that Toad Village harbored 1,000 bandits and that Ching Dali was mercilessly killing people for pleasure. To further tarnish Ching Dali's image, strategist Bai portrayed him as the most ferocious bandit, alleging that he consumed human flesh as a daily meal. Additionally, a wanted list was posted on the city's bulletin board, offering rewards for Ching Dali's head. Ching Dali, showing tenacity, inquired about the bounty on his head. Commander Wang responded that Ching Dali's head was valued at 50 copper coins, a sum that disappointed him. Continuing, Commander Wang disclosed that Zhu Shenji had a bounty of 35 copper coins, surprising Zhu Shenji himself. The black-faced man was deemed worth 30 copper coins, eliciting a lament from Qin Man, expressing regret that he couldn't personally kill Han Hujue. Ching Dali, visibly irritated by the seemingly low value placed on his head, expressed his discontent. He found it demeaning that they had only put a bounty of 50 copper coins on him. In their era, copper coins were the currency, and 1,000 copper coins could be exchanged for a single silver coin. To put it into perspective, in Ching Dali's previous life, the living expenses of an ordinary farmer were only 3 to 4 silver coins per year. Turning to Zhu Shenji, Ching Dali asked about the bounty on Gao Feihu's head. Zhu Shenji responded, mentioning that he thought there was a bounty of 180 copper coins on Gao Feihu. Ching Dali responded with determination, asserting that he would undoubtedly surpass the bounty placed on his head. On the other hand, Commander Wang pondered whether having a high bounty was a favorable circumstance. In the midst of the conversation, Warrior Lin chimed in, expressing his wish for Commander Wang to join them, citing his sincerity with clenched fists. Commander Wang eagerly agreed to join Toad Village. The system goddess made an appearance, providing additional information. She revealed that Commander Wang, often referred to as Butler Wang, appeared to be a general but was, in fact, a butler. The pop-out information box stated that his name was Wang Xinyan, a slightly popular butler at the age of 43. Possessing no skills or hidden attributes. Ching Dali, curious about Commander Wang's perspective on Toad Village, asked if it was good enough for him. Commander Wang affirmed, prompting Ching Dali to inquire why. Ching Dali expressed his concern that Commander Wang might be looking down on them. He emphasized that even though they were a small bandit village, each member was equivalent to 100 soldiers. This assertion left Butler Wang speechless. Zhu Shenji reassured Butler Wang that Ching Dali was stringent, but Ching Dali went on to assert that if Butler Wang truly wanted to join them, he would have to write a 5,000-word application letter. This proposal surprised Butler Wang, who complained about the extensive word requirement, questioning if Ching Dali intended to kill him. Ching Dali defended his request, stating that if Butler Wang found this task challenging, it was a way to gauge his sincerity and assess the potential benefits of having him on board. Undeterred, Butler Wang closed his eyes momentarily and presented Ching Dali with a treasure map. Alongside the map, he offered a document, questioning if these items would demonstrate his sincerity. Curious, Ching Dali accepted the map and document, inquiring about the nature of the treasure map. Butler Wang explained that it was a map treasured by the city lord, stolen by him during his escape from Black Rock City. He disclosed that 30 years ago, they were attacked by bandits while trying to repel them, and in the process, they acquired valuable items. Unable to carry all the treasures, the city lord hid them in different locations. The map in Ching Dali's hands revealed the whereabouts of these hidden valuables. Ching Dali, seated, opened the map, eager to learn about the locations of the hidden treasures. However, Butler Wang admitted that he didn't know the exact locations depicted on the map. This revelation left Ching Dali perplexed, as the absence of specific information made the task more challenging. Butler Wang explained that if anyone had known about the treasures, they would have been unearthed already. Ching Dali, scrutinizing the map, observed only a depiction of a mountain and a river without any written indications. This raised the question of who might possess the knowledge to decipher the map. Acknowledging the potential value of the map, Ching Dali informed Butler Wang that he still needed to prove his worth. Considering the crisis his clan was facing, Ching Dali proposed that if Butler Wang successfully resolved the crisis, he would accept him into Toad Village. Reflecting on the challenges of being a bandit, Butler Wang wondered about the tasks assigned to him. Ching Dali clarified that they had stolen numerous horses, leaving both Zhu Shenji and Butler Wang puzzled. Upon verification from Ching Dali that the horses were indeed burdensome, Butler Wang suggested selling them to merchants in Fallen Leaf City or to other bandit clans. Ching Dali expressed his approval of the plan to sell the stolen horses, and when he asked Zhu Shenji if he had been listening, Zhu Shenji confirmed that he had. Zhu Shenji had considered suggesting the same plan, but Butler Wang had beaten him to it. Nevertheless, Zhu Shenji acknowledged the brilliance of the idea, tapping Butler Wang on the shoulder and giving him a thumbs up. Ching Dali applauded Butler Wang for his quick thinking and adaptability, recognizing him as someone who could keep up with the challenges. Butler Wang, appreciative of Ching Dali's praise, thanked him while reflecting on the motivations behind his recent actions. Soon after, inside the Flying Tiger village surrounded by lush woods, Gao Feihu informed Lao Er that his horse had gone blind and couldn't be used in wars. However, he assured Lao Er that they would find him a good replacement. Lao Er, excited by the news, inquired if Gao Feihu would be giving him his horse. As they discussed, several knocks were heard on the gate, causing a commotion among the bandits of the Flying Tiger village. Concerns arose about a potential invasion, but Gao Feihu assured them that it was good news. They gathered to investigate, discovering posters hung on the trees outside the village. Ching Dali, hidden in the bushes with Warrior Lin, inquired if Warrior Lin had finished pasting the posters. Ignoring the question, Warrior Lin informed Ching Dali that the bandits had come out. Warrior Lin informed Ching Dali that he had finished pasting the posters, and when he inquired about Ching Dali's progress, Ching Dali confirmed that he was also done. He urged Warrior Lin to head over to the next village. Several Flying Tiger bandits ventured outside and noticed the posters. Curious, one of them asked what was written on it, prompting others to request their village master, Gao Feihu, to read it for them. To their surprise, the poster turned out to be an advertisement for horses for sale, offered at a discount of 20 if customers brought the flyer. Gao Feihu, while reading the message, remained composed, but the peculiar handwriting and sentences stirred excitement within him. As Gao Feihu was reading, someone yanked the poster from the tree, perplexing him. He questioned Lao Er about the act and why he was tearing it off. Lao Er, smiling, gave Gao Feihu a thumbs up and explained that by bringing the paper along, he would be entitled to a discount. Qin New Mountain's surroundings were filled with posters, and the dog head, wild boar, apricot blossom, bald head, and other bandits were mostly talking about it. Other bandits were reading the posters and decided to go and see what they were planning to do. Fast forward to Cheng Dali and some of his team standing outside Toad Village, where Su Shinji stated that he was skeptical that anyone would come, to which Cheng Dali replied that there was no need to rush. Cheng Dali, exuding confidence, assured Su Shinji that the posters needed time to draw people in. Inwardly, Butler Wang lamented joining yet another seemingly arrogant individual, a recurring theme in his experiences. Despite feeling unlucky, he kept his thoughts to himself. Linger, however, noticed their presence and promptly informed the village master. A horde of bandits on horseback approached Toad Village, prompting Cheng Dali to swiftly order his team to prepare their horses with precision and avoid mistakes. As the bandit swarm reached the village entrance, Cheng Dali and Butler Wang stood their ground. A bandit demanded entry, declaring their intent to buy horses. Meanwhile, Kinman perched on the roof, arrow drawn and ready. Cheng Dali intervened, instructing Kinman to hold his arrow. Understanding the command, Kinman reluctantly agreed, awaiting further instructions. A sweaty Lao Er of the Flying Tiger Bandit, visibly irritated, questioned whether Cheng Dali and his team genuinely intended to sell horses. Gao Feihu, the village master of the Flying Tiger Village, intervened, advising them not to be angry, emphasizing their sincere desire to purchase horses. They even brought food and insisted on being allowed to inspect the horses before proceeding. In response, Cheng Dali urged everyone to calm down and instructed Butler Wang to explain the rules. Butler Wang then announced the utilization of the hidden auction method. Gao Feihu, still on horseback, inquired about this unfamiliar approach. Butler Wang elaborated, stating that in this method, a curtain would conceal the silhouette of a horse, guarded from view. He further explained that during each auction, a horse would be placed behind the curtain, and participants would bid on it, with the highest bidder winning the horse. The bandits voiced their objections to the auction system, expressing concerns about being unable to assess the horse's condition, such as whether it was blind or handicapped. They also worried about the possibility of the auction horse being swapped for another. Cheng Dali, growing irritated, abruptly silenced them and issued a veiled threat of invoking his thunder, instilling fear among the bandits, who promptly fell silent. Cheng Dali then instructed Butler Wang to continue. Butler Wang reassured the bandits, emphasizing that they did not engage in horse-swapping tactics after the auction. He acknowledged that although they could observe movement behind the curtain, the horse's appearance remained concealed. Butler Wang explained that acquiring a horse depended on luck, and with just a few bids, one could secure an excellent horse. With no further queries, he initiated the auction, starting with the first horse and an opening bid of a single bag of grain. Despite the auction's commencement, the majority of the bandits remained silent and reluctant to participate. Su Shinji discreetly conferred with his village master, expressing concern about the lack of bids. Cheng Dali shared the worry, suggesting that it might be a low-class horse. Just as the tension lingered, a lady boldly declared her intention to bid. A group of armed lady bandits emerged, and one of them confidently bid with a bag of beans. The male bandits were visibly impressed, praising her beauty. Su Shinji whispered to his village master, revealing that the lady bandit belonged to the White Wolf faction from Apricot Blossom Village. Enraged, the White Wolf brandished her knife, warning everyone to stop staring or face dire consequences, threatening to dig out their eyeballs and feed them to the dogs. Despite the tense atmosphere, a bandit congratulated the Apricot village master on securing the horse at a low cost, privately acknowledging that she had acquired a valuable horse for just a bag of beans. Butler Wang officially declared the victory of Apricot Village in the first round and instructed Warrior Lin to present the horse. As the curtain unveiled, a majestic and stunning white horse emerged, capturing the attention of the onlookers. The Flying Tiger Bandits were astonished as they recognized the white horse they had previously planned to steal. Simultaneously, some bandits among the onlookers began plotting to take the horse from the Lady Bandit. This sparked anger in the village master of Apricot Blossom Village, who vehemently threatened anyone contemplating theft, asserting she would kill them on the spot. She brandished a poster from her chest, inquiring if she could use the discount letter. Ching Dali reassured her, stating that she had nothing to worry about. Keeping his word, he directed Butler Wong to return her 20 kilograms of beans. As she prepared to mount her horse, White Wolf stepped on the stirrup, expressing her gratitude. She then sat atop the horse, flipping her long blue hair. White Wolf smiled and instructed her sisters to return, emphasizing that they were leaving. Observing her departure, Su Shinji remarked on her looking even cuter while riding the horse. Ching Dali smiled at her, his admiration evident. In a moment of unexpected vulnerability, Ching Dali blushed as he gazed in awe at her beauty. The bandit crowd grew increasingly noisy and impatient, with some urging a swift start to the next horse auction, demanding that no time be wasted. Others were seen searching for misplaced flyers, requesting their colleagues to return them. Despite the chaos, Ching Dali felt that the auction was finally progressing well. He turned to Su Shinji and inquired about White Wolf, expressing his curiosity. Su Shinji, being familiar with White Wolf's background, agreed to share more details. Before she became a bandit, she hailed from a martial arts family, having learned martial arts from a young age and specializing in swordsmanship. However, her life took a tragic turn when her husband passed away, and she was forced to marry a coffin. Labeled as a jinx, she faced disdain and mockery from people. The turning point came when her grandfather attempted to take advantage of her one night. In response, she defended herself by stabbing him and fled to Apricot Blossom Village. Back at Toad Village, Ching Dali blushed as he inquired of Su Shinji whether all the Apricot Blossom bandits were female. Su Shinji revealed that the Apricot Blossom bandits shared similar stories to White Wolf. Many were widows or abandoned by their families. Ching Dali, slightly surprised, wondered why Su Shinji hadn't shared such crucial information earlier. He suggested that they should establish a friendly relationship with the Apricot Blossom bandits in the future. Su Shinji explained that some Kinnu Mountain bandits had expressed interest in collaborating with the Apricot Blossom bandits, but the latter believed all men to be untrustworthy, advising Ching Dali to abandon the idea. As they discussed this, a commotion drew their attention. A disgruntled bandit accused them of intentionally deceiving him, claiming that the bid should not be counted as they had deliberately sold him a blind horse. Butler Wong explained that he had attempted to intervene, but the bandit persisted, winning the bid for the blind horse, and the auction rules did not allow for refunds. Ching Dali approached the disgruntled bandit to understand the situation further. Butler Wong reiterated his efforts to prevent the bid, but the bandit, named Lao Er, perceived them as greedy, thinking they had a valuable horse hidden for a higher profit. Lao Er, frustrated, accused Ching Dali of being cunning and seized Butler Wong, expressing his discontent about receiving a blind horse despite providing a substantial amount of food bags. He demanded that the bid be nullified. Ching Dali calmly reminded them that the rules had been established and couldn't be altered. To emphasize their stance, Ching Dali threatened to halt the horse bidding, much to the displeasure of the Flying Tiger bandits, who were keen on continuing. The Flying Tiger bandits became agitated, opposing the idea of stopping the bidding. Some placed blame on Lao Er for being unlucky and regretting his decision to retract his words. Gao Feihu, the Flying Tiger village leader, intervened and ordered the return of the food bags to resolve the matter. Despite initial resistance, Lao Er accepted his fate and instructed them to take back the bags. As Lao Er's hand reached into his chest, he retrieved his flyer and reminded Ching Dali to honor the discount later on. Following this, Butler Wong declared that the bidding should resume. In the end, each horse was sold for a minimum of 8 bags of food. A total of 76 horses were successfully auctioned, fetching 500 bags of food, along with a collection of equipment, weapons, and various items. To put it into perspective, 1 bag of grain equaled 100 kilograms, and with 500 bags, the total amounted to 50,000 kilograms of food. This marked a substantial addition to Toad Village's resources, filling their storage vault with a variety of crops such as wheat, soybeans, black beans, small grains, millet, and sorghum. Ching Dali couldn't help but reflect on the profitability of war, acknowledging that such a significant amount would be challenging to amass through farming alone. As the sun began to set, Ching Dali suddenly recalled that he still had a lottery draw chance. After Huan Xian retreated and he received a lottery draw reward chance, he decided to try his luck tonight. A flying tiger bandit was in command of his horse, struggling to control it as they made their way back home. Gao Feihu questioned why they couldn't simply walk, prompting Lao Er to explain that being a group of bandits with horses gave the impression of prosperity, and dismounting might convey the image of poverty. They paused briefly to admire the rosy orange sunset, which inspired Lao Er to compose a poem. However, his village master quickly silenced him, not wanting to endure his noisy verses. Lao Er then wondered if there was truly a lightning spell in this world. The village master believed so, having witnessed it himself, and suggested consulting their advisor, who might possess more knowledge on the matter. A few villagers lurked in the bushes on the cliff edge of the mountain, and a son curiously asked his father if there was a god in this world. His father responded, questioning why there wouldn't be, citing the example of Lai Dog receiving 2 horses from the gods after his visit to Toad Village. Rumors had circulated in the village, attributing the horses to a divine gift. The son, growing impatient in their hidden spot, had yet to witness any signs of the gods. His father advised patience, emphasizing that matters of the divine required sincerity. Suddenly, a distant noise reached their ears, prompting the father to believe that the gods had finally arrived. Excitedly, he leaped off the cliff edge, urging his sons to follow and witness the spectacle. Moments later, Gao Feihu suggested to Lao Er not to be upset and to head back for some food and wine. Lao Er, inquiring about selling the 2 horses, questioned if anyone would buy them. Gao Feihu dismissed the idea, stating that he didn't believe anyone would be as foolish as Lao Er. The villager dad, after rolling off the mountain, left his sons worried about him. As he repeatedly chanted for the mountain god to spare him, Gao Feihu, the flying tiger bandit, and his bandit companions were surprised and intrigued. Gao Feihu halted and inquired about their identity. In response, the dad and his sons, kneeling, referred to the bandits as the mountain god. They explained their plight, describing themselves as poor people living below the mountain with wheat they couldn't harvest. With humility, they requested a few horses to alleviate their challenges. The enraged Lao Er, drenched in sweat, couldn't contain his fury at the villager's request. Dismounting from his horse, he berated the man, expressing his anger at being scammed of numerous bags of food only to have the audacity to request horses, not just one but a few. Confused by the sudden hostility, the villager dad found himself in a precarious situation. Lao Er, consumed by anger, grabbed the villager dad and threatened physical violence, demanding to know who had sent him to provoke such a reaction. The villager dad remained on the ground, fervently pleading with the mountain god for mercy, emphasizing their poverty and lack of possessions. His sons, positioned behind him, watched in fear for their father's safety. However, Gao Feihu, the flying tiger bandit, recognized the villager as the affluent noble Li Zhuang from Li Village. In their previous encounters, Li Zhuang had always been accompanied by many guards, deterring the bandits from attempting to rob him. The revelation that Li Zhuang had come alone this time surprised Lao Er, the sweaty bandit. Lao Er speculated that they must have accumulated good deeds, prompting God to take pity on them. Considering the situation a blessing in disguise, Lao Er ordered his comrade to tie up Li Zhuang and his sons. He further instructed someone to be sent to their house, demanding a ransom for their release. As darkness set in, the crescent moon was visible despite partial cloud cover. Ching Dali decided it was time to draw the lottery and summoned the system goddess with a snap of his fingers. The system goddess eagerly exclaimed, "Here we go." Ching Dali conveyed his simple wish for a bazooka, rocket launcher, tank, or helicopter. However, as the system goddess shook the lottery machine, it got stuck. Frustrated, she shook it harder while Ching Dali stood silently behind her. Growing upset, the system goddess complained about the teasing machine, kicked it in outrage, and a draw ball finally emerged. However, instead of bringing relief, the ball hit Ching Dali on the head before falling to the ground. When it opened, Ching Dali discovered he had obtained the beginner defense drawing for the bandit. Reflecting on the situation, Ching Dali acknowledged that this reward was different from the amazing construction map they received last time. Now, with 5,000 kilograms of food and increased wealth, they had become a target for others. Concerned about potential threats, Ching Dali pondered the uncertain future for their small bandit group. Time was running out. In the morning, on the cliffside of Stone Mountain, Ching Dali turned to Butler Wang, seeking his knowledge and insights on recruiting more people. Expressing his desire to expand their manpower, Ching Dali asked Butler Wang where they might find potential recruits. Butler Wang, known for his knowledge and awareness, cautioned Ching Dali that it might be a challenging endeavor. Intrigued, Ching Dali pressed for an explanation, prompting Butler Wang to delve into the societal structure of the empire. Butler Wang elaborated that the people of the empire were divided into 4 distinct classes. Cheng Dali, eager to understand, asked for a detailed explanation of these classes. Butler Wang began to elucidate. The royal family, the pinnacle of the hierarchy, the Li Shi family, was established 120 years ago. They held immense honor and authority, living without the need to work. Revered by many, they comprised the first class. The aristocracy. This class included noble families, city lords, and affluent merchants. These individuals held considerable wealth and status, forming the second class. The common people. The third class encompassed commoners, consisting of landlords, squires, and small-scale merchants. The outcasts and disenfranchised. The fourth class comprised outcasts, villagers, wanderers, and slaves. Intrigued by this societal structure, Cheng Dali asked Butler Wang to clarify which class bandits belonged to. Butler Wang clarified to Cheng Dali that bandits do not have a recognized class in the empire, essentially placing them in the lowest stratum. The empire doesn't acknowledge bandits as part of their society, considering them even worse than wanderers, slaves, and beggars. Most bandits were ordinary people forced into a life of crime due to the lack of alternatives. Having a family member become a bandit was seen as a disgrace to ancestors. Cheng Dali was surprised to learn the extent of society's disdain for bandits, equating their existence to something worse than trash. Unfazed by this revelation, Cheng Dali shared his plan to build a wall around the village to enhance their defense facilities. Butler Wang acknowledged the merit of the plan but pointed out the lack of manpower for such an undertaking. In response, Cheng Dali handed Butler Wang a scroll of paper, explaining that it contained the defense system he designed. Despite it being provided by the system, Cheng Dali considered it something he had created. Opening the scroll, Butler Wang was amazed by Cheng Dali's ingenuity. Grateful for his village master's skill and determination, Butler Wang knelt and thanked Cheng Dali, pledging to do his best to support him in their endeavors. Cheng Dali, determined to address the manpower issue, assured Butler Wang that he would come up with a solution. If recruiting within their ranks proved unsuccessful, they could consider bringing in individuals from other bandit groups. Butler Wang, however, expressed concerns about potential spies infiltrating their ranks from other bandit groups. Cheng Dali remained unfazed, suggesting that if the recruitment plan failed, they still had dynamite at their disposal. He instructed Butler Wang to return and make preparations with the military strategists. Cheng Dali himself ventured to the edge of the cliff to examine the village landscape. Standing at the brink, Cheng Dali marveled at the height of the cliff. He lingered there until the sky turned rosy orange with the setting sun. Assessing the layout of the Toad village below, Cheng Dali noted that it was in disarray, reflecting the lack of proper planning by the previous bandit leader. Contemplating the need for potential destruction and reconstruction, Cheng Dali thought about the challenges ahead. As he pondered the situation, the system goddess emerged, notifying Cheng Dali that the exploration of the Toad village was complete. In reward, the landscape and layout of the Toad village were imprinted into Cheng Dali's memory. Cheng Dali shut his eyes, contemplating the newfound ability to extract a map by simply exploring any location. Opening his eyes, he acknowledged the practicality of this information. Meanwhile, Gao Feihu, engrossed in roasting meat by the bonfire in the Flying Tiger Bandits village, was startled by repeated knocks and the proclamation of important news. Despite Gao Feihu's sense of foreboding, his companion, Lao Er, excitedly encouraged him to step outside. Numerous posters adorned the tree trunk, prompting the bandits to urge their village master to swiftly read the contents of the flyer. This time, Lao Er willingly volunteered to read the contents of the flyer for the bandits. The announcement hailed from the Toad village, enticing recruits with promises of noodles and pancakes. As Lao Er delighted in the prospect of riding the coolest horse and enjoying the company of beautiful girls, Gao Feihu's displeasure became evident. Gao Feihu, visibly upset, branded Cheng Dali a bastard, expressing his disdain for such shameless tactics. He vehemently objected to the recruitment efforts extending to other villages, declaring his intolerance for such behavior. Upon deciding to question Cheng Dali, Gao Feihu commanded his comrade to fetch a sword. Meanwhile, Lao Er's anticipation for noodles and pancakes grew evident, and he urged Gao Feihu to calm down. Seating themselves by the bonfire, Gao Feihu, frustrated, questioned how he could remain composed in the face of bullying. Lao Er, advising patience, suggested waiting for their military advisor's return and handed Gao Feihu a bottle of wine, urging him to cool down. Gao Feihu promptly drank the wine. As the Flying Tiger bandits engaged in conversations about testing their luck at Toad Village, eagerly contemplating the prospect of weapons and delectable treats, the banter continued, with the bandits envisioning a trip to Toad Village while craving noodles and pancakes. Lao Er approached Gao Feihu, suggesting he had an idea and inquiring if Gao Feihu was interested in hearing it. He went on to propose a strategy. Since Toad Village aimed to recruit from their village, they could send their comrades to partake in the food and drinks. Lao Er clenched his fist as he emphasized that they would seize the right opportunity to strike and occupy Toad Village. Gao Feihu was stunned by his comrade's remarks. While Lao Er inquired if he liked his plan, however, Gao Feihu responded no. He was surprised as he did not expect that he would know about the word opportunity, which left Lao Er dumbfounded. A man named Zhou Xiaoshu, a member of the Flying Tiger village, recounted his experiences in Toad Village. Born to bandit parents, Zhou Xiaoshu found that life as a bandit was not as glamorous as people assumed. Contrary to the stereotype of bandits indulging in constant feasting on meat and wine, Zhou Xiaoshu had not enjoyed a proper meal in over a year. The past 2 years had been harsh, marked by a lack of harvests and barren farms. In the absence of grain, impoverished individuals like Zhou Xiaoshu were compelled to scour the mountains for wild vegetables just to sustain themselves. Today, he went to Toad Village with the second master of Flying Tiger Village, thinking they would join them. Lauer, the second master, said this was a scheme, but he didn't know any further details, so he would just tag along. Many bandits from other villages also came, but Butler Wang was blocking everyone from entering. He was saying that they needed to register first. Everyone else was standing in a queue, but the second master wanted to cut the queue and was blocked. He thought the second master was quite stupid. Being illiterate, he found it challenging to decipher the content written on the paper. He tried to mimic the actions of the person in front of him, but his inability to draw a circle correctly left him feeling ashamed. Subsequently, someone handed him a saw and instructed him to work independently. The second master expressed no objections. He was tasked with cutting wood, while the second master was assigned to move the timber. Around noon, a charming girl passed by and informed them that their diligent work would be rewarded with dumplings in the afternoon. Dumplings, usually reserved for special occasions like the New Year, were considered a luxury. He vividly recalled the previous year when, after savoring a single bowl of dumplings, he couldn't bring himself to consume wild vegetables or bread for several days. At lunch, they were served dumplings with their distinctively white, shiny skin, filled with a delectable mixture of meat and wild vegetables. He indulged in 3 bowls, reflecting on how he never imagined a day would come when he could enjoy dumplings to satisfaction. This joyful experience contrasted with the memory of being reprimanded the previous year for daring to eat an extra dumpling during the New Year. That night Toad Village gave them 5 kilograms of food. After returning to their village, they told everyone about today's events. Everyone was suspicious at first and didn't believe what they said. He even heard someone requested that the village master send all of them to Toad Village. Now that they had made a fuss, he might not be able to go to Toad Village tomorrow. He pondered if such a good thing could happen to him every day, so just in case they did not allow him to go, he would sneak out by himself. One day's work at Toad Village was worth 5 kilograms of food. If he worked for a few more days, he would not have to worry about food during the winter. His parents had not eaten noodles and buns for more than a year. This year was bad because it hadn't rained in a long time, but he shouldn't think too much because he needed sleep first. A short while later, within Flying Tiger Village, the second master complimented Gao Feihu on the delicious food they had prepared, praising the perfect balance of salt. With a laugh, he admitted to sneakily pilfering some of their salt, confident they would never uncover his mischief. As Gao Feihu savored his meal, he told the second master that he had sent him to gather information about Cheng Dali's thunder spell. He inquired about any discoveries, to which the second master reported that Cheng Dali had not made an appearance that day. While continuing to eat, Gao Feihu advised the second master to bring more people with him on the next visit, ensuring a thorough investigation into Cheng Dali's tricks. The second master eagerly agreed, expressing his intention to return the following day, fueled by his desire for more of their delectable food. He pleaded with Gao Feihu to join him, emphasizing the allure of having noodles in every meal. In response, Gao Feihu couldn't contain his frustration, cursing the second master under his breath. The following day, an additional 1,000 guests arrived, and as anticipated, Butler Wang showcased his exceptional managerial skills. Various individuals were assigned tasks, including building walls with stones, excavating earth, and crafting bricks, infusing the entire village with a dynamic energy. In contrast, Miss Su remained notably quiet, seated beside Chong D. She questioned why he chose not to go outside, to which he responded that he wished to maintain an air of mystery. Rumors circulated that Chong D was intensifying his cultivation and mastering thunder spells. He preferred not to venture outdoors too often, fearing that if people witnessed him engaging in ordinary activities, such as using the toilet, their admiration for him might crumble. Miss Su inquired about Chong D's presence in her room, to which he playfully responded, stating it was because she was pretty. Despite his teasing, Miss Su remained silent. Chong D persisted in tormenting her, claiming he considered her the most beautiful woman on the mountain. In response, Miss Su dismissed his words, labeling him a liar. Meanwhile, the bandits carried on with their tasks involving logs and stones. Attention turned to Kinman, who someone observed lifting a weight of 340 kilograms. Impressed by his strength, others praised him. However, Kinman, sweating profusely, humbly downplayed his feat, modestly stating that he was not as remarkable as they thought. Upon the request of others, Kinman agreed to demonstrate his strength. Astonishingly, he lifted a stone mill, weighing at least 450 kilograms, with ease. The bandits were left in shock, cautioning him against overexertion. Holding up the stone mill with both hands, Kinman amazed several bandits with his monstrous strength. Speculation arose among onlookers that his actual strength surpassed 500 kilograms. After showcasing his prowess, Kinman gently lowered the stone mill and humbly stated that he considered himself nothing extraordinary. He acknowledged that he was not the strongest person present, revealing that his village master possessed twice his strength. Observing the scene through a window, Chong D concluded it was the right moment to make his entrance. Miss Su stood by and observed as he left. Intrigued, she peeked out of her window as the bandits recognized Chong D and eagerly requested a demonstration of his strength. Kinman, excited, proposed a spar with his village master, but Chong D, claiming a lack of time, advised him to return to work. Unhappy with this response, Kinman questioned if Chong D was looking down on him. In a charged moment, Kinman charged straight at Chong D, who remained composed. Chong D skillfully blocked Kinman's advance with a calm hand. Kinman's hand trembled after the block, struggling to maintain its grip. Chong D, unimpressed, instructed him to get lost and released his hand, causing Kinman to fly through the woods. Chong D calmly approached the fallen Kinman, inquiring about his well-being. Kinman, still catching his breath, assured him that he was fine and expressed gratitude for Chong D's gentleness. Chong D offered his assistance and cautioned Kinman against impulsiveness, emphasizing the risk of injury if he used more than 60% of his strength. The bandits were left in shock, their jaws dropping in surprise. They couldn't help but wonder about Chong D's full strength, speculating on the unimaginable power he might possess if he were to unleash 100% of it. Butler Wang issued orders for everyone to begin working, specifically calling on those with greater strength to gather in a designated area. Pointing in a direction, he explained that they needed to smash a massive rock and extract its materials for building walls. The bandits engaged in discussions about the daunting boulder, weighing over 1,000 kilograms, speculating on who could successfully break it. Some suggested Butler Wang try it himself, while another bandit proposed that Toad Village Master, known for his monstrous strength, should take on the task. Butler Wang turned to Chong D, his village master, asking if he would be willing to smash the boulder. Chong D dismissively replied that he shouldn't bother him with such trivial tasks. Gesturing for the bandits to back up, Chong D extended both hands, invoking lightning with a sudden burst that created a loud noise and scattered debris. The startled bandits shielded themselves from the flying debris with their hands. Chong D continued gesturing, reiterating his disdain for being bothered with minor matters. He rhetorically questioned what they were waiting for and instructed them to get to work. The bandits promptly started their tasks, assuring Chong D they were on it. As Chong D walked away, Butler Wang bid him a pleasant day. Inside a house moments later, Miss Su asked Chong D about what had transpired. He complained that his back hurt. 10 days later, the construction project was successfully completed, giving Toad Village a transformed appearance. The village had been reorganized into distinct zones to enhance functionality and defense. The outermost area, the defensive zone, was fortified with stones and mountains. A watchtower stood near the wall, allowing vigilant observers to spot enemies in clear sight and promptly alert the entire village. Behind the defensive zone lay the preparation zone, designed to impede invaders should they breach the outer walls. This area featured a working space, a horse stable, a blacksmith's forge, a hospital, and various other essential facilities. A public toilet was strategically placed near the horse stable, recognizing the importance of artificial fertilizers. Following the preparation zone was the residential area, comprising living quarters, houses, kitchens, a water well, a weapons depot, and a granary. The landscape outside Toad Village underwent significant changes, with all the trees being chopped down and ingenious traps set on the seemingly flat ground, skillfully designed by kinmen. These traps included horse pits, lassos, and a specialized mechanism for catching wild boars. Butler Wang conveyed to Chong D that they had distributed almost all their food, leaving them with only 100 kilograms. However, Chong D assured him that the village, not being densely populated, need not worry. He instructed Butler Wang to go back and manage the expenses for food and accommodations for the villagers, as they were gearing up to store food and recruit more people. Butler Wang, smiling, agreed to the task. Amidst the developments, someone informed Chong D with a laugh that the village's construction had been completed, and the system was rewarding him with 1 acre of chili plants and the evolution of systematic animals. Chong D expressed his dissatisfaction with the reward of 1 acre of chili plants, considering it to be insufficient. The system goddess, in response, appeared taller and bigger, prompting Chong D to observe the change. She explained that each significant transformation in the village led to an upgrade in her appearance. Playfully, she raised her hand and encouraged Chong D to advance boldly, aiming to become the Bandit King. In a mystical moment, a pop-up box appeared, presenting a list of missions for Chong D to accomplish. The first mission was to change Miss Su's impression of him using a non-violent approach, with the reward remaining unknown. The second mission entailed recruiting 100 people for Toad Village, for 1 lottery draw chance. Lastly, the third mission challenged Chong D to complete 10 robberies, again with the reward shrouded in mystery. Gao Feihu of the Flying Tiger Bandits sat at a wooden table, holding a cup, while listening to the second master's account. The second master conveyed that witnessing Chong D's use of a thunder technique was a stunning experience, especially when a massive boulder exploded after he roared. The entire scene left them in awe and terror. Intrigued, Gao Feihu turned to his advisor, who stood beside the second master, seeking his perspective on the matter. The advisor explained that he had inspected the rock taken from the canyon where the explosion occurred. He revealed that the mark on the rock was caused by dynamite, debunking the notion of a thunder technique. According to him, Chong D had deceived them with a clever trick. The system goddess emerged, presenting a pop-out box of information about Yu Qiu Ran, a skilled military advisor at the age of 42, renowned for his knowledge and extensive travel experience. Gao Feihu, feeling confused about dynamite, sought clarification. The advisor explained that dynamite was akin to firecrackers but possessed more devastating power. He emphasized the rarity of dynamite, even in the outside world, making it unlikely that the people of Kinnu Mountain would be familiar with it. Gao Feihu expressed frustration, stating that they had been deceived by Toad Village. The second master affirmed this acknowledgement. When asked about thunder techniques, the advisor clarified that there were none. Gao Feihu, angered by the deceitful actions of Toad Village, expressed his determination to invade. Military advisor Yu Qiu Ran recommended a measured approach, suggesting there was no need to rush against Toad Village. Despite Gao Feihu's desire to vent his anger, he acknowledged the importance of their current priorities. He asserted that the Toad Village could wait, promising that sooner or later, they would have their chance to deal with them. Fast-forwarding, Chong D contemplated the difficulty of recruiting for his missions. He believed the third assignment could be accomplished by Kinman and Warrior Lin, leaving him with the challenge of changing Miss Su Ying's impression of him using non-violent methods. Recognizing that these missions were interconnected, with a substantial reward awaiting their completion, Chong D decided he needed to be a smooth talker to win Miss Su's heart. Amused by the situation, Chong D laughed and ran, expressing that his knowledge from joining many dating sites would finally come in handy. This perplexed the system goddess. Shortly afterward, he called for Miss Su, who looked back at him. In a nonchalant manner, Chong D added, "I love you." To his surprise, Miss Su walked away, leaving him stunned. Despite the unexpected response, Chong D thought that she should have blushed, as per his expectations from various dating experiences. Undeterred, he resolved to proceed with Plan B. Chong D decided to follow her discreetly, tell her things like where he had seen this beautiful woman before but found that Miss Su continued to ignore him. Chong D persistently referred to Miss Su as his sweetheart, asking her where she was going, but she consistently ignored him. Undeterred, Chong D adopted a nonchalant approach, expressing his desire to love her and think about her every day. Despite his affectionate words, Miss Su remained silent. Chong D went a step further and left love-themed notes in Miss Su's room, filled with words related to love, some of which made little sense. Although Miss Su became increasingly irritated with the notes, she kept her frustration to herself. Chong D continued bombarding her with lines about love, stating that love is passionate and blind. He assured her that there was no better promise he could make than being the best she could ever find. Frequently startled by Chong D's unexpected statements, Miss Su endured his persistent declarations. Chong D urged her to keep him in her heart, emphasizing that the mind forgets, but the heart always remembers his love for her. He playfully referred to himself as her honey. Finally, in response to his relentless efforts, Miss Su put her hand on Chong D's cheek, surprising him. She then inquired if he was feeling unwell. Chong D was utterly crestfallen, his disappointment palpable. He appeared despondent until Zhu Xinji's call broke the silence, bearing news that Linger had been poisoned. Chong D's reaction was one of profound shock, urgently pleading to be taken to her side at once. Upon arrival, the sight of Linger writhing in agony pierced his heart. He called out to her, and Linger, weakly responding, expressed fear of impending death. Chong D, consumed by concern, demanded an explanation for her condition and the cause of her poisoning. Xinji recounted how Linger had unwittingly ingested a red fruit while foraging mushrooms, resulting in severe swelling, burning, and profuse sweating. Xinji ruefully reflected on his daughter's penchant for sampling various foods and vowed to find a remedy. Perplexed, Chong D inspected the fruit, only to realize it was a chili, a revelation that surprised him. Xinji, perplexed, inquired if Chong D was aware of its poisonous nature. Chong D clarified that while Linger found it excessively spicy and had a startling reaction upon first taste, she would recover once she drank water. Chong D, recalling chili's long history since the Kang dynasty, couldn't comprehend how they had failed to recognize it. Determined to confirm his suspicions, he sought Su Ying's opinion. Turning to her, he displayed the chili and questioned its nature. Su Ying, unsure, tentatively labeled it as some kind of fruit. Intrigued, Chong D probed further, contemplating the potential profits from its sale. Su Ying, never having tasted it, expressed curiosity. Chong D suggested she try it, valuing her opinion. As Su Ying sampled the chili, Chong D pondered its absence in this era, reflecting on his privileged early access to it through a reward from a system. To him, it symbolized luxury and affluence. Shifting the conversation, Chong D remarked on Su Ying's prolonged abduction, wondering if her lack of ransom indicated her insignificance. Su Ying's response betrayed irritation and surprise at Chong D's callousness. Undeterred, Chong D assured her of his unwavering loyalty, expressing a willingness to defy the world for her sake. With a wide smile, Chong D welcomed Xiao Yu's arrival, eager to hear news of his hunt. He inquired if Xiao Yu had captured anything noteworthy. Xiao Yu's response was modest. He had only managed to catch a rabbit and a girl who claimed to be a maid from the Su family. Suddenly, a child accused Chong D of consuming their miss. Chong D was taken aback by the accusation. Surprised that such a young girl would venture to King New Mountain, Su Ying, recognizing the girl as Xiao Yi, called out to her. Xiao Yi expressed relief at finding Su Ying alive, admitting her fear that Su Ying might have fallen victim to their captors. Su Ying reassured Xiao Yi, praising her for her bravery. Xiao Yi then questioned if Chong D had mistreated her, to which Su Ying affirmed her well-being. Sensing trouble within the Su family, Chong D decided to consult Huang and Xiao Yu for a better understanding of the situation. Meanwhile, as Lin Xiaoyu set out for hunting, he initially contemplated robbery but was surprised when only a young girl approached him. Introducing herself as Su family maid, she disclosed her specific journey to King New Mountain to find Su Ying. Despite the potential dangers, Xiao Yi exhibited unwavering determination to locate Su Ying at any cost. Initially, Lin Xiaoyu contemplated sending Xiao Yi back to Fallen Leaf City, but upon learning of Xiaoyu's origins in Toad Village, she insisted on accompanying him, refusing to be left behind. Upon hearing Xiao Yi's story, both Chong D and Huang expressed incredulity. They pondered why she hadn't called for help if she encountered other bandits and jokingly speculated whether Xiaoyu's good looks played a role in her trust. Chong D redirected the conversation, turning to Huang to discuss the ransom they should demand from the Su family. Huang hesitated, citing the chaotic situation within the Su family. Ching Dali pressed for more information, and Huang divulged that the boss of the 4 sea merchants, Su Si-hai, had no sons but several daughters, with Su-ying being the most capable of inheriting the business. However, complications arose due to Su-ying's deceased mother and the stepmother's desire for her own daughter to inherit. Huang suspected that they might have even hoped for Su-ying's demise at the hands of Cheng Dali. Suddenly, Su-ying interjected, declaring her intention to depart and personally gather the ransom. Cheng Dali questioned her decision, but Su-ying remained silent. Cheng Dali had a realization. Su-ying had previously mentioned that those with even a modicum of wealth would not resort to banditry. Moreover, Su-ying was the daughter of a wealthy merchant. The next day, Cheng Dali sat down to compose a letter, speaking aloud as he wrote about the ransom for Su-ying's release. As he could consume humans during this occasion, Su-ying read the letter, which requested 500 grains, clothing, rice paper, salt, wine, and books. She sighed, commenting that he wasn't asking for much, and promised to send double the requested items once she resolved her family's issues. Cheng Dali then informed Su-ying that Xiao Yu and Huang would accompany them safely to Fallen Leaf City, which was about 70 to 80 miles away. Handing Su-ying some chili, he suggested she use it to earn profits, knowing her family owned a restaurant. Su-ying agreed. Despite his efforts to impress her, Cheng Dali felt he had failed to touch her heart, pondering if it was made of stone. As the day grew late, Cheng Dali urged them to prepare. Crossing paths with Su-ying, he recited a poetic saying, "Flowers bloom on the street but return slowly." Su-ying halted Cheng Dali, prompting a conversation. Cheng Dali, curious, asked if there was something on her mind. Su-ying opened up, expressing how Cheng Dali's words and actions had stirred feelings in her, making her believe she might be falling in love with him. However, she harbored suspicions that it was all a facade. Cheng Dali's guilt was palpable as he remained silent, listening to her doubts. Su-ying continued, asserting that genuine love couldn't blossom from falsehoods, stressing that sincerity mattered more than anything. Cheng Dali, troubled by her words, asked if there was anything she desired. Su-ying simply requested honesty from him before they parted ways. Cheng Dali, pondering the depth of his feelings for her, leaned in and whispered something in her ear. Cheng Dali said to Su-ying that when he first saw her, he got hard and started to trail off. Su-ying, perplexed by Cheng Dali's statement, seeks clarification. Cheng Dali, taken aback and feeling embarrassed, struggles to find the right words in response. Observing his blush, Su-ying persists in her inquiry. Cheng Dali's silence leaves her feeling sulky and disinterested. She resolves to consult someone else for an explanation. Cheng Dali, growing anxious, implores her to keep it between them, but eventually relents, promising to disclose more when they reconvene later. In that moment, Cheng Dali thinks that Su-ying is only 17 years old, and likely has a mindset that kissing could lead to pregnancy. Considering Su-ying's youthful innocence and lack of knowledge in such matters, Cheng Dali reflects on his own past actions, pondering if they appear foolish or ridiculous. He questions whether Su-ying's heart is an enigma to him, and even wonders if he has been deceiving himself. Amidst his contemplations, the system alerts the completion of the second stage of their mission with a reward of a heavy crossbow, though further conditions prevent the mission's progression to its third phase. As the sun sets inside the carriage, Xiao Yi expresses surprise at Cheng Dali's decision to let them go. Sensing Su-ying's troubled state, she inquires about it. Su-ying, unsure, asks Xiao Yi about the meaning of a man saying he is hard, prompting skepticism from Xiao Yi. Upon their arrival in Fallen Leaf City at night, Su-ying questions if Cheng Dali's heart has become hardened. After bidding farewell to Su-ying, Cheng Dali retrieves the heavy crossbow reward, planning to use it for defense. When Kin Man inquires about its origin, Cheng Dali suggests placing it on the watchtower. Later, Cheng Dali decides to cultivate chili, drawing from his past experiences with plant cultivation. He contemplates the process of drying the chili, extracting the seeds, fertilizing the soil, planting the seeds in small holes, and covering them with soil. During that moment, Shinji interrupted Cheng Dali's thought process, suggesting descending the mountain to rob someone. Cheng Dali quickly dismissed the idea, accusing Shinji of shirking the responsibility of helping with the chili cultivation. Meanwhile, below King Mu Mountain, when White Wolf approached Cheng Dali, questioning his presence in the scorching weather for robbery, Cheng Dali asserted his professionalism as a bandit. He countered by asking why White Wolf had sought him out in the heat, hinting at her purpose. In response, White Wolf mentioned receiving information about a promising opportunity and proposed cooperation. Chong D suggested discussing the matter back in the village. Observing the chili plants, White Wolf mistook them for fruits, prompting Chong D to clarify and offer some for cultivation, but White Wolf remained silent on the offer. Later, Chong D offered her a cup of well water, apologizing for the simplicity. He then inquired about the upcoming opportunity. White Wolf revealed plans to intercept a batch of birthday gifts passing through Kingmu Mountain in a month, proposing a collaboration between their groups to rob the gifts. Chong D inquired if the gifts were from Shui Banchuan, to which White Wolf confirmed. With a sly smile, she elaborated that Shui Banchuan, in his bid to consolidate power in the city, sought to appease local forces and secure support from the city lord of Yuzhou. White Wolf suggested that the quantity of gifts would be substantial and that they would follow a designated route. She proposed an alliance, emphasizing the combined strength of their groups and the potential for wealth. However, Chong D hesitated, expressing his reluctance to harm innocent people due to his adherence to a divine spell, fearing retribution from the heavens. Disappointed by Chong D's indecision, White Wolf withdrew the offer of cooperation. Despite his desire to participate, Chong D weighed the risks of potential losses. Before White Wolf departed, Chong D offered her some chili plants, suggesting she cultivate them. Once fully grown, she could exchange them with the village for food. White Wolf insisted that Chong D keep the chilies for himself. Later that night, a bandit from the Zhu family arrived at Toad Village, seeking Chong D and requesting to borrow seeds for farming. He promised to return double the amount borrowed. Chong D ponders the Zhu bandit family's situation, recognizing their small numbers, comprised mostly of elderly and children, and their lack of manpower for farming. He asks if they cultivate chili, to which the man seems uncertain. Chong D proposes the idea of growing chili and offers them seeds to start, explaining its value as a commodity that can be exchanged for essential food items like wheat, soybeans, and chestnuts. He directs the bandit to Huang to obtain the chili seeds. Concerned, Chong D reflects on the potential food shortage even among mountain bandits, who are exempt from taxes. After a few days, Warrior Lin and Butler Huang return from Fallen Leaf City with various supplies, including pigs, chickens, cloth, salt, paper, grain, and a pen. Meanwhile, 50 to 60 bandits scout the area around 50 kilometers away from Kingnu Mountain, preparing to ambush the guards transporting the gifts. The news of the gifts spreads quickly throughout the mountain, igniting everyone's eagerness to seize them. While others focus on robbery, Chong D concentrates on raising chickens, growing vegetables, and occasionally participating in robberies. Chong D, Xiaoyu, and Kinman take turns being on duty, and after 10 days, they have completed almost half of their tasks. Even when encountering small merchants, they only take insignificant items like buttons and sometimes even guide them out of Kingmu Mountain. Chong D remains adamant about not harming innocent people. Xiaoyu shares his viewpoint that their actions may not truly be considered robbery. Chong D responds, explaining that he can't rob the poor man they encounter, but suggests they'll find a wealthy target elsewhere on Kingmu Mountain someday. Meanwhile, as a woman urges the man to slow down and return to Zhou City, he argues that traveling provides invaluable real-life experiences. He reflects on the beauty of the scenes they encounter, which he wouldn't have witnessed if he had stayed in the city. Concerned about the dangers of the area, including mountain bandits, the woman questions the wisdom of their journey. The man dismisses her concerns, asserting his ability to handle any bandits they encounter. Suddenly, Chong D emerges from nearby bushes, startling them. The man cries out in alarm, while Chong D instructs them to stand still, initially mistaking the woman for a eunuch. In response, the man reassures the woman and asserts his presence with her. However, he internally frets about facing Chong D's axe with only his sword. After a brief silence, he decides to surrender. The woman is taken aback by this decision, expressing surprise at both her brother's surrender and Chong D's confused expression. The man introduces the woman as his sister and attempts to negotiate, offering to leave her behind as satisfaction for Chong D to let him go. Flustered, the woman exclaims her disbelief at her brother's willingness to sell her out. Despite his sister's protests, the man justifies his actions, promising her a bright future and pledging to always remember her sacrifice. The woman, upset and furious, scolds her brother, calling him a bastard and expressing disbelief at his willingness to consider selling her. Chong D interrupts their argument, asking for their names. The woman reveals herself as Li Wan-er, and the man is Li Xing-er. When asked about their professions, Li Xing-er hesitantly responds that he is a scholar. Chong D expresses disappointment upon hearing that Li Xing-er is a scholar, considering scholars to be poor. He then questions why Li Xing-er is there, to which Li Xing-er confirms his dream of traveling the world and writing poetry. Chong D sarcastically remarks on their current situation, revealing that they have been kidnapped, though Li Xing-er and Wan-er maintain a poker face. Later, back at Toad Village, Wan-er recognizes their location as the rumored Toad Village and asks Chong D if it is true. Curious, Chong D questions her statement, wondering what led her to believe it was Toad Village. Li Xing-er explains that they were the ones who, with just 5 men, successfully defended against an army of 1,000, causing the soldiers from Black Rock City to flee in fear, even abandoning their armor and weapons. Chong D is taken aback by the rumors circulating about his group, particularly the outlandish notion that they eat humans and drink their blood. Wan-er asks if they're kidnapped to be used as food, but Chong D finds the idea absurd, pointing to himself and questioning if he looks like a cannibal, to which Wan-er agrees. Redirecting the conversation, Chong D sets the rules straight, informing them that as long as they remain peaceful, they won't be harmed or imprisoned. However, he warns them about the dangers of King Mu Mountain, filled with bandits, and suggests that if they believe they can leave the area alive, they are welcome as his guests. When Wan-er questions why they're being kept there, her face reddens as she hints at something before stopping herself. Chong D explains that as scholars with knowledge, they are expected to document everything they know. Once they finish writing, he promises to safely escort them out of King Mu Mountain. He instructs Shinji to prepare ink and arrange a separate room for the captives. Later, in the captives' room, Wan-er expresses curiosity about Xing-er's decision to surrender, mentioning how even their sword mastery teacher praised his skills. Xing-er responds with a question of his own, finding the bandit village intriguing. Wan-er is confused about how such a place could be interesting, but Xing-er explains that the bandits' kidnapping for knowledge is fascinating. He directs his sister to prepare the ink, declaring that as a poet, he will write a poem. Somewhere in Toad Village, Chong D inquires about the news and updates. Wang informs him that the escorting team will reach King Mu Mountain within the next 10 days. Based on their gathered intelligence, they will be sending a person named Lu Hum to escort the gift. Curious about Lu Hum, Chong D asks for more details about him. Huang provides information, mentioning that Lu Hum is around 30 years old, an orphan who uses a big stick as his main weapon. Having been adopted and taken care of, he has no parents or relatives. Huang adds that Lu Hum is known for his loyalty and strength. Chong D points out that if Lu Hum is strong, the other bandits wouldn't plan to rob him directly. Huang agrees, suggesting that they might resort to ambushes, poison, or traps instead. He then asks Chong D if they should intervene. Contemplating the situation, Chong D mentions their limited numbers. The scene then shifts to King Mu Mountain, where an atmosphere of restlessness pervades. Inside the Toad Village, Xing-er excitedly banged on Wan-er's door, calling her name. He urged her to get up, telling her he had something to show her. Annoyed by his behavior, Wan-er asked if he had stolen the servant girl's clothes again, implying it was a recurring habit of his. Xing-er denied it and asked her to stop dwelling on the past, insisting they go out so he could show her something. As they walked and talked in the Toad Village, Wan-er's curiosity piqued, and she questioned Xing-er about the outdoor bathing she had heard about. Xing-er clarified that it wasn't about bathing but rather about what was in the pool. He explained that the spring water flowed down from the mountain into a basin covered with straw to keep out insects and dust. The basin also contained gravel and charcoal. Wan-er, slightly confused, asked about the purpose of using charcoal in the water. Xing-er confirmed that charcoal could indeed be used to purify the water from vermin. When Wan-er inquired about the possibility of bugs in the water, Xing-er admitted he didn't fully understand the details but had gone to the trouble of creating the pool because he found it useful. A minute later, somewhere in the Toad Village, Wan-er questioned why Li Xing-er was leading her to the hut, expressing concern about its potential odor. Xing-er encouraged her to go inside and see for herself, but Wan-er refused, stating her reluctance. Unpersuaded, Xing-er declared that if she didn't enter, he would explain the purpose of the hut. Xing-er went on to elucidate that beneath the hot pack lay a large hole connected to the stable for horses and pigs. He warned of beetles that could fly into human bodies and cause illness, while also noting the potential for digging out fertile fields. When Wan Er questioned the purpose of these endeavors, Xing Er admitted uncertainty but believed in their usefulness, asserting that the more one explores the world, the more one learns. Xing Er then questioned Wan Er about her perception of the village's simplicity. Wan Er countered, pointing out the small population of only 6 people, implying potential limitations in resources and capabilities. Xing Er agreed but hinted at the mountain stronghold's owner and their ambitious plans. Intrigued, Wan Er asked Xing Er to cease his suggestive staring at the thatched cottage and accused him of being a pervert. She began to voice further thoughts, but Xing Er quickly shushed her, urging her not to speak further. After that moment, in the evening, Cheng Dali pays a visit to Xing Er and inquires about his progress. Xing Er responds that he has been diligently documenting everything he has witnessed and heard in Jingzhou. Cheng Dali's vague response, writing books, prompts Xing Er to question him further. Cheng Dali simply acknowledges Xing Er as a poet and emphasizes his own aspiration to create a masterpiece that will stand the test of time, regardless of whether he fits the stereotype of a writer. Xing Er and Wan Er remain neutral at Cheng Dali's remark. Cheng Dali changes the subject, expressing interest in Xing Er's poetry and requesting to see the poems he has written. Xing Er proudly mentions that he has composed a few songs that have impressed even established masters. Intrigued, Cheng Dali snatches the paper from Xing Er's hands and begins to read the poems. After perusing them, Cheng Dali expresses a critical opinion, suggesting that they can barely be classified as poetry and expressing doubts about the state of poetic talent in the empire. Sensing Xing Er's discomfort, Wan Er intervenes, defending Xing Er by stating that his poems are renowned throughout Jingzhou. Cheng Dali suggests they open their eyes to real poetry. He then begins to write something himself, commenting that if his writing were to spread publicly, he'd fear it might intimidate talents throughout the entire empire, causing them to hesitate to pick up a pen. Xing Er smiles and responds with a sarcastic remark about Cheng Dali's confident tone, while Wan Er silently thinks Cheng Dali is being too boastful. Finishing his writing, Cheng Dali abruptly declares it's getting late and advises them to rest. As he heads to the door, he stops by Xing Er, questioning why he's only writing one sentence. Cheng Dali explains that one sentence is sufficient, jokingly suggesting he might scare them to death if he wrote the entire poem. Xing Er adds that he's uncertain about the talents in the world, but after reading the sentence, he feels he wouldn't be able to write anything for the rest of his life. The following morning, Xinji informs Cheng Dali that Zhu's village has been destroyed. Cheng Dali demands to see the place for himself. Upon arriving at Zhu village, Cheng Dali is filled with shock and indignation as he witnesses the devastation, flames engulfing the village and lifeless bodies scattered around. It's revealed that over 30 people, including the elderly, weak, women, and children, were mercilessly annihilated. The village, once bustling with children and the elderly, now lies in ruin. The group of bandits expresses shock and confusion, wondering who could be responsible for this heinous act, as they had a peaceful relationship with the people of Qingwu Mountain. One member suggests that the attack was carried out by someone from outside. White Wolf interjects, discovering a note hanging on a sword, speculating if it's a blood-stained message left by the mastermind behind the attack. The bandits are curious about the contents of the notice. White Wolf reads the letter aloud, revealing that in 3 days, someone will cross over from Qingwu Mountain. The letter demands that the people of Qingwu Mountain surrender one by one and gather at the mountain's foot, or else the entire mountain will face slaughter. The letter is signed by Lu Hum, who is associated with Blackstone City. In Cheng Dali's thoughts, he realizes that this act was intended to serve as an example to others. He comments bitterly that the lives of mountain bandits are deemed cheaper than a dog's.